The future. Sorry for. They'll soon start putting up those signs. We
Meaning-
apologize for the current inconvenience. It's for the benefit.
And
of
do I
the
hear
future.
you saying that in order to enjoy the benefits of the future, you must endure a little inconvenience?
Yes.
That's
Today.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Today. Okay.
No, this one is not today. This one is today, tomorrow, the day after.
For the next
Yes,
Yeah.
year.
For a while.
for a while.
For a while.
For a while.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Now, this is where the story of public transportation now begins to make sense. Because if we had a better system for public transportation, this wouldn't be an issue.
It would really not be. It would, because you'd be talking about just a single bus carrying very many people
Or
and
a
taking
single
off very
train,
many vehicles.
or a single tram, or a single this or the other.
There was a plan by the former Nairobi governor, Evans Kidero, to put up those, what do you call those things, that cable cars in Nairobi.
And
You don't remember? You know, that's a problem when you have one governor who has these brilliant plans, and then the next governor comes with other brilliant plans. Kidero, as I remember, went to Germany to just do a fact-finding mission and benchmark on trams.
Trams,
He came
yes,
back and
not
talked
cable
about
cars.
tram,
Because
and then he
cable-
also talked about cable cars, that they were going to put up pylons in some parts of the city, and they'll be transporting people, especially in Eastlands.
Unajua, cable cars ukiona mahali ziko, they tend to have mountains.
Yeah, so here,
Here, mountain
they
iko
were
wapi?
going to put up, we're just going to put up high pylons, and then the cable cars will move on those pylons.
Why not just ensure that this railway that National Youth Service is now very busy constructing with the armed forces? Why not just simply
It is augmenting all those things. So there was going
Yes.
to be
What about trams?
improvement of the rail, come up with trams, do underground, and then do the high cable
Underground.
cars. Yeah,
underground
yeah.
tube in Nairobi?
In this our city. Think future cities.
I'm thinking future. I'm thinking water table in Nairobi. Yes. For the longest time, one of the reasons why Nairobi was what it was, it was considered too swampy to actually settle in. And why? Water table iko juu kidogo, so ukichimba tu unapata
You'll
maji.
be in water.
Yeah, so the issue of the tube, that one.
no.
No, it's so you think again, please. Come up with another one. Just like with the issue of the pylons.
Those pylons, you actually just check online, you'll find a story like that.
Oh no, I remember
You
the
remember,
story. I
right?
remember the story, but then you see, I'm thinking it's an excellent idea, but was given who we are, where we are, what we need.
You see, like the cable cars, the same idea that had been proposed, was it by the Japanese for the Likoni channel?
Yes.
Similar. Only that now the thing that is below you is not water, it is buildings and roads and people moving up and down. But you just put up pylons.
In Nairobi.
Sort out, ain't jam. Enter that cable car somewhere on a raised platform.
You know,
in
trams,
Mutindwa,
trams
you're
pia,
in town in
trams
5.
pia, trams pia, haina jam. Railway,
Haina.
haina jam.
It's
So,
beautiful.
Railway requires land. Start now doing
The land
National Land
exists.
Commission. You compensate. You
the
go-
land exists.
Yeah, in one area. Now
No,
imagine
it
if you
exists.
expanded the network.
It exists, brother. You know, this pylon thing, I have refused.
Oh, okay, clearly.
Yes, it's not.
You
It's
know
not.
what your stance
No, I'm
No.
not. No,
Cynthia said no.
no. Pylons.
Anyway, welcome to the show. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's begin where we always begin, looking at the numbers. Yeah, just tell us about the numbers.
Okay. So, 144 cases out of samples taken of 4,260 is what has been recorded in Kenya. And on a day when the president of the country, Uhuru Kenyatta, has announced that the curve is beginning to flatten, and the government has declared that COVID-19 infections are slowing down, but has cautioned Kenyans not to drop their guard just yet. The decline in COVID-19 cases suggests the country may have passed the peak, which was anticipated to have started this week. And if I quote the president, he says, in the middle of this crisis, the curve is beginning to flatten. However, we must not celebrate this happy moment too soon, but rather celebrate it with a great deal of caution. It's on the same day that there are reports coming from the World Health Organization that there's been an asterisk that has been put at the progressive drop in COVID-19 cases in Kenya over the last 3 weeks. The statement said that while the drop in COVID-19 cases in Kenya follows trends for Nairobi and Mombasa counties, it does not show the real picture. This decline closely mirrors trends for Nairobi and Mombasa counties, which account for 64% of the total cases. However, this potentially may mask the national picture as other counties are experiencing increasing case numbers. In summary, the World Health Organization has noted that there has been a decline in the number of laboratory tests being conducted in Kenya and has criticized Kenya's testing strategy, saying the target has been low-risk groups. And finally, some county labs have reported a shortage of test kits and specimen collection kits. So whereas the numbers may be dropping, it's not giving a true number, or rather a true picture of what's happening in the country as far as COVID is concerned. Okay?
So see, they give us that true picture.
According to them, the true
if
picture.
they have the picture, see, they give us.
The true picture can be seen if you're testing more and testing high risk groups. My goodness, both of you are walking up today with guns blazing. Wow, okay.
No,
So
it's that pylon thing.
Titi
that
has
brought
said
this
no
thing.
to pylon. Eric has said World Health Organization then should give us the true picture. If not, they should shut up. No? Okay. So they've cautioned. Can I continue telling you what they said, or you are
Yeah,
done?
yeah,
with
just
that?
No,
go on.
please carry on.
Go on,
Okay,
go on.
so they also said they've cautioned against the rapid interpretation that the drop in COVID-19 cases in Kenya constitutes a true decline in the spread of the disease. Who said that
Pun intended here.
while these are encouraging quality indicators that may be used as proxy to decrease transmission, the findings should be treated with caution. Okay?
Okay.
So you've been told, don't just be celebrating.
That's all
You're
right.
not testing, so it could be that more people in the country have this thing. So please, organize
Sawa.
yourself.
We are dealing with R.
Why don't we bring into this conversation a certain perspective that somehow WHO and the Western world have refused to discuss to any great degree? That perhaps the African is differently configured DNA-wise. And as a result of that, this COVID virus will not treat him as abnormally as it has been treating.
The African living in Africa.
Yes, not the ones living abroad.
Born and bred in Africa.
here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any African elsewhere.
No, them, they will be subject to what happens to their neighbors and friends there. But the ones here, because for the longest time, every prediction that was made about the effects of the COVID virus went south.
Yeah.
The West would say this is what's about to happen. We look at the continent, it's not happening. Maybe it's a reporting issue, okay? We then report, again, it's not happening.
Not happening.
The not happening narrative was downplayed completely. Even now, with the numbers, there seems to be this idea that the numbers should be higher. So even when the numbers are actually not higher,
They're still like,
they're still feeling no. They ought to be
Aye,
higher.
No.
So,
This,
Because this is Africa.
yes. And then there is this explanation that, epidemiologically speaking, viruses are supposed to behave this way. Now, it is clear that that virus is not behaving the way it should here.
The way they want it to behave here.
The way it has been behaving in the West and the way it is anticipated it should behave, it's behaving differently. And there seems to be difficulty in accepting that that difference exists.
yeah.
Yes.
And it's a major difference.
But it is a difference, and it's a
is
major difference.
Huge difference. Because
Yes.
the one thing that's for sure is, and we've mentioned this very many times before, we can downplay testing, we can downplay a number of infections. We can never hide deaths.
No, you can't.
You cannot hide
It doesn't matter what you do.
You cannot hide death.
Remember, we were talking about Somalia, and this is where now it wasn't so much deaths as it was burials.
Yep.
This is a burial site. At this point in time,
This was the situation.
This was the situation. But now there has been an increase. you don't bury people who are alive.
No? Well, some people do,
ordinarily,
but-
you don't.
Okay, ordinarily, thank you for that.
And not in such large numbers. So it became clear that people were definitely dying. Yes. Now, the world over, if you wanted to genuinely determine what was happening with COVID, it is not difficult to determine.
Where people are dying, though, is the United States, and that number has risen to 187,736. Those numbers you cannot hide.
No.
6,211,796 total cases in the U.S., and only half of that number having recovered. So the U.S. is dealing with 3 million, just about 3 million, just under 3 million, rather, active cases of COVID. Those you cannot hide. Brazil on the cusp of 4 million cases. India just over 3.5 million. Russia almost at 1 million. Peru 6.5 million. South Africa almost at 6.5 million. Now those numbers are not lying. Mexico with 3,719 cases in the last 24 hours with 256 deaths. Those numbers you absolutely cannot hide. And it still continues in the Central American countries where we see heightened levels. Belgium pops out at us again, where recently they had been able to flatten the curve, or so they thought. Now with 194 cases in the last 24 hours, we also know yet another country where people are traveling back from the summer holidays, and we have more cases of community transmission. We're going to see this in a lot of European countries. Now that the summer is over, people are entering into the fall season. And then again, like we had said before, flu season is also kicking in, essentially, as the winter months are beckoning. You're going to see increased cases of COVID-19.
But the word surge is actually going to be, should we say, a pleasant greeting, because they'll skyrocket.
They will. They will. Whereas you had people who had gone away, because this is what happens. They go away to the beaches where the sun is for 2-3 months, and then they come back and kids are going back to school. People are going back to work. Because this is the thing. People go on furlough for 3 months. And they plan their year like that, COVID or not. They're going to go away for the summer.
And they go. And they have gone.
And now they're coming back.
You know, I almost said they have went. Then I realized that is in English. They have gone.
They went.
They went.
You can actually say whatever you want.
And consider, even with the opening of universities, what is being witnessed are the same spikes that we're speaking of.
Yep.
In fact, you realize that much as our economy is being battered as a result of some of these decisions, but people are not dying in droves.
People aren't even falling sick at the doors of hospitals.
Yes. The issues that we had with regards to just the safety precautions, which we have maintained and continue to maintain, okay? Countries that had, again, a Kenyan phraseology, rubbished, okay? They are now engaging high-speed reverse gears and saying, no, it's a must.
Let's do this.
And they're even imposing fines and saying, if you're found without a face mask, this will happen. Surely, the people who seem to be chasing their tails with this issue of COVID is the West.
They're all over the place.
Yes, we have definitive decisions that have been made by our leaders. You may not think that those decisions are right, but they have made definitive decisions. And they said this is the way we are going. Look at our neighbors. Each of them, the definitive. Uganda, Rwanda, definitive decisions, similar.
Yep.
Tanzania, different. But
same.
they've made a decision.
Tanzania, same.
Yes.
Definitive decision.
Yes.
You live your life.
And deal with whatever comes when it comes.
Ifukize kila siku. 18 minutes after 6. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's look at the skies. How's the weather going to look like around the country and around the world this morning? Let's look at that and then start looking at the major headlines in the newspapers this morning.
24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
As the world changes, so do we. We adapt to our situations to bring out the best in us. This is why the Standard Group and Oxford University Press East Africa have partnered to bring you Tutor Summer Online. For just 10 shillings, you have unlimited access to the reputable source of revision materials conveniently. All you have to do is log into tutorsoma.standardmedia.co.ke and make the most of the time for all students, including candidates for both primary and secondary schools. So, as we stay home, we keep dreams of future successes alive while making homeschooling an achievable reality together, effectively. Tutor Soma Online. Log in to success.
Nairobi's waking up to clear skies this morning
A
at 12
partnership
degrees.
between-
We'll see highs of 26 today and lows of 11 and partly cloudy conditions throughout today. Njeri today is also partly cloudy at 12 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 11. Nakuru sees partly cloudy conditions at 13 this morning, but then into cloudy conditions and rain later with highs of 24 and lows of 18. Mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret will rule the morning, and then thunderstorms are forecasted for later with highs of 19 and lows of 11. It's 19 degrees and mostly cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 28 and lows of 18. Kakamega is partly cloudy at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 14 with chance of rain soon enough. Light rain showers already being experienced in Mombasa, 23 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 22, and those rains will continue through the day well into Wednesday. It's partly cloudy in Malindi at 24, going to highs of 28. We'll have rainy conditions later. Stepping out of Kenya, let's go into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 18 degrees. Highs of 25 today, and there are thunderstorms in the offing for later. Dar es Salaam is clear at 21 degrees, going to a high of 31 today. It's warming up in Johannesburg as we had gotten out of the winter months. 9 is where it is this morning. It'll go to a high of 14 and lows of 7 with rain for the first time in many months in Johannesburg. It's clear skies in Lagos at 25 degrees, going to a high of 29, and in the rainy season we'll see rains throughout the evening into Wednesday. Clear skies in London at 8 degrees, where things seem to be cooling down just a tad. It'll go high to 20 and lows of 7. Paris this morning at 12 degrees is clear as the sun comes out soon. 21 degrees the high and lows of 11. And finally in New York, it's raining still on Monday night at 24 degrees, and they'll wake up to rain this morning, going to a high of 26 and lows of 21.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
22 minutes after 6. Let's begin with today's proverb. CT Muga.
Right.
Is it the second? Yesterday you had 2 that you're wondering which one do I start with? Which one do I?
You know,
So you started with the other.
actually, I only voiced it yesterday, but it's something that often occupies my mind because I'm looking at the proverb and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it. Now, today, this one is actually straightforward. Without fools, there would be no wisdom.
All right. Without fools, there'd be no wisdom. Yeah. So we need fools.
Yes, we
I
do.
think we could do without them, man. But anyway,
We need them. So let's start appreciating fools.
You see, the comparative element that they introduce into any discussion is
fools?
is what what highlights what we refer to as wisdom. In the absence
They're
of
a
something to
benchmark.
compare it with, how on earth would you know that this is this or that is the other?
how would you know if this is a fool?
Or a foolish thing to do.
Okay. All right.
Without fools, there would be no wisdom.
Yes.
Straightforward. Let's look at the headlines. Big one. There are many headlines on the Standard today. There's an interview with the former Auditor General, Robert Okoh. What's his name? Okoh. Why they never... Edwin, yes. Edward Okoh.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
Edward Okoh.
Robert is also okay, but his name is
But
actually Edward.
it's Edward. Yes. Because I thought, no, this is not the name. It's Ed Okoh.
Robert was the other guy who was in Zimbabwe. Yes, who's no longer with us.
Okoh.
No,
Was that guy
he was actually
who...
called Mugabe.
Mugabe.
Yes,
The other Robert Okoh is the other
Bob,
guy.
the late. Yes.
The other guy who...
There's
Robert
another who
Okoh was an
caught up in
athlete.
some shooting a couple of weeks
The one that the investigators told us that he went and shot himself in the head and then torched himself.
You're talking about the good doctor. But there was one who was also an athlete.
An athlete called Robert Okoh.
Yes, an 800-meter runner.
Yes.
So it's a popular name.
Yes. So here there's an interview where he's talked to the Financial Standard today, being Tuesday is the day for the Financial Standard, why they never wanted me. Okay, you can read that. But then there's Raila's party calls MCA's talks over Obado's fate. When it rains,
It pours.
So the Migori governor, Okoth Obado, yesterday he and his family and his co-accused were released on cash bail and bond by the Milimani Commercial Court, the Milimani Courts, not commercial, but the Milimani Anti-Corruption Court. And then it also happens that ODM has asked MCAs to meet so they can discuss the future of the county. And they don't want TO to discuss Obado. No. They just want to discuss the county because of the people of Migori deserve services. So they want to discuss what's the best thing to do. So the MCAs have been called for a consultative meeting a few hours after the embattled governor was released on bail. In a letter to the MCAs through the majority whip Keke Oyugi, ODM's executive director Odoro Ngwen said the MCAs will meet the party's national leadership today. You are requested to invite all ODM members of Migori County Assembly to attend a meeting with the national leadership of the party at the National Secretariat. The Secretary General Edwin Sifuna denied any plans to impeach the governor, as was being peddled on social media, saying the meeting was out of concern for the welfare of Migori residents in light of the court decision. You see, according to Sifuna, Obado is the first casualty in an ODM electoral turf to be barred from entering office. It's of urgent concern to the party to consult with the area leaders on the way forward. So this is party taking leadership, seeing now that the government will not be able to access office. MCAs, please come, let's see.
Let's see what we can do.
Mr. Obado doesn't share their view because it is also reported that he's been tweeting from his cell that, and he even names the senator's name has popped up, that this there is an attempt and a plan and a plot to actually kick him out. Yes. So as they say, the plot thickens.
It does.
And remember, his deputy has been sworn in.
As?
Well, he has to be acting. You cannot leave. And to act, you just can't be told, Nani, be acting. You have to be given a legal... I mean, the law, of course, states categorically that when the governor is indisposed in a certain manner, very specific manner, the deputy then acts. Yes, shida iko hapo. And the focus, if you notice from yesterday and today, has been on the deputy.
Yeah.
More focus than we've seen in any other case where governors have faced such an issue. When the governor of Kirinyaga had this issue, did you hear the mention of the deputy? No.
Nope.
When the governor of Kiambu had an issue, the only time the name of the deputy came up was adversely, that the deputy and he did not get along. But beyond that, no.
Nope.
No, nothing.
When we had the same issues with other governors, the name of the deputies don't really spring up. But this one, it has. And it has been a point of discussion.
Ah.
Yes.
So now all eyes are on him. This is Nelson Mahanga. Because he has to be the acting governor for a while. He has to at least be able to do some work.
Does it not strengthen the argument that the deputy governor for Njeri has been fronting for quite some time?
I'm actually thinking the contrary.
Why?
That's what's running in my mind.
Why? Please.
Because I'm thinking, so Nelson Mahanga has been, has been operating with the county assembly at an arm's length. That's why any of these allegations about decisions that were made about the running of the county do not touch him. So when you have an issue...
Not even with a 12-foot pole.
Yeah. So you have an issue that emerges in the governor's office, the deputy governor will not be involved. If you have an issue that extends to the county executive, the deputy governor will not be involved.
Actually, even the cabinet, it doesn't touch him.
Yeah. He will not be involved. So if there was an issue that was, about impeachment of a certain docket, you see the way we saw like in Kirinyaga case. In the Kirinyaga case, Anno Iguru would argue that, look, I am not the accounting officer. The accounting officer is the CEC. So you should be questioning the CEC. Now imagine if one of those CECs who
was the
deputy, then what are we talking about?
They'll be culpable.
They'll be culpable. So I'm just thinking, that's what was running through my mind. I was thinking, maybe this is what it is. This is that security that you now have.
Because you will not be touched by anything of this. Because you're really not part of,
of the daily running of.
Actually, so those who are saying, I hadn't thought of it actually. So those who've been agitating for more involvement should perhaps rein their horses a
They
little
should
while
be a little bit careful.
and think a while. Yes, because this
Because
case.
if you get involved or if you're included, then you'll be just that. You will be involved and included across board.
Yep.
You'll do the work, and then you'll also get some of the blame should anything go south.
And then the assembly will raise the same issue. If we've impeached your governor and you are the one who was, let's say, the prime minister in this government,
You must also.
we
You'll
don't
be
have
you'll be
confidence
tired
in
of
you.
that same brush.
Yeah. We don't have confidence in you as well. So both of you out.
This deputy actually has a history of being involved in politics. He at some point did try to vie for a seat in his neck of the woods in Kuria land on an ODM ticket. He wasn't really successful.
As an MP?
Yes, as an MP.
Okay.
And then he decided that politics wasn't for him, and he went on with his life. So
Until he was tapped by Obado.
yes, until he was tapped, because there was the need. Remember,
balance.
that part of Migori land have also felt at some point that perhaps they should be given some sort of autonomy.
So Migori actually has both Luo and the Kuria.
Yes, it does. And the population of the Kuria gives them a minority status.
Right.
If you remember that even their women's rep was actually selected from Kuria land on that understanding,
So it's like we're balancing.
we're balancing and there's inclusivity as a perspective here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting perspective. Let's take another break and we continue looking at other headlines. It's 6:30. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. What's happening on the roads, we find out, and then we look at other big headlines. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Guys, let's see what it looks like today. Not too much to report at the moment. It hasn't just gone crazy as yet. We'll likely see heightened levels of traffic in parts of the city today. But for now, it seems that everybody is behaving. Mombasa Road is not looking too bad. Neither is it looking terrible on Thika Road at the moment. Everybody's moving in fine fashion. We'll see how that clogs up and let you know what alternate routes you can use. If you want to take the longer yet smoother routes, the bypasses are open, eastern and southern, leading to and from Thika Road, Mombasa Road, and Langata Road, and into the CBD. Okay, anything jumps out at you, let us know. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. But for now, guys, Tuesday morning traffic doesn't look too bad. We'll see how it develops in about half hour.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done.
Clock. Other headlines, CT?
Now, this one, I'm glad you mentioned the word headlines. Now, this is where now, true, a reporting issue versus
A headline.
what actually happens.
Okay.
Business Daily. How Moi sold to Chumi fake 2.3 billion shilling property. Headline. Kabza
Fake
headline.
property.
Business Daily.
All right.
Now, when you go to the story on page 4, as it unfolds, it's actually very interesting. What you find then is that there was a certain gentleman who owned this piece of land, 17 acres in Kasarani, right? And called Mr. Samuels. Okay. Now, this Mr. Samuels died in 1974. Right? So there was a lease that was about to expire. According to this report, the allocation was not to Mr. Daniel Arap Moi, but to a certain company that he owned a part of. There were other people who owned it. Okay. Now, this particular company then was allocated this land, but prior to the lease expiring. So that's where the
How long after the death of Mr. Was he Simons?
2001.
Okay.
Yes. And the company is called Solio Construction, right? And they paid 85 million shillings in 2001 for the land. They paid. The land was allocated to them. Now, where the issue now becomes interesting is that then Uchumi proceeded to also buy this land.
From
Solio.
From Solio.
As we speak now, the land is actually owned by the Kenya Defence Forces. Okay? So, again, the argument of more irregularity comes in. Now, if you follow what has been documented here as this particular, the details of this particular land, you'll find that actually, you can actually see where the wrong was, but the issue doesn't revolve around the former president.
So Moi did not sell fake land?
No, there's a company that
Moi sold land to...
Moi didn't sell anything.
This company called Solio sold land to Uchumi.
Yes.
Where does the KDF come in?
This is now where the plot actually thickens. Because if this is where now reading it becomes, I think, imperative so that you can understand. So it isn't my word. Okay? Uchumi Chief Executive Mohammed told the committee that investigating this matter that it is seeking to have the ownership tussle with Kenya Army for the prime property resolved by the head of the public service, Joseph Kenywa. Kenya Army forcibly took over the property despite the Ministry of Defense lacking the title for the prime property. They just took it.
Okay.
So that's where now the tussle comes in.
When did this happen?
Oh, this one, my friend, happened in 2004.
Okay. Are there any records of the lands ministry showing the allocation of the land to the
yes,
army?
now that is where now the plot, as they say, thickens. There are details, okay? Now, after buying the land from Solio, Uchumi later moved to sell it to Jewel Complex Limited, which paid a deposit of 330 million that was financed by KCB. All right? Okay. Jewel had committed to conclude the construction on the condition that the land LR 5875-2 is merged with the nearby plot LR 23393, which it also intended to acquire from Grace Independent Baptist Mission trustees using a loan of an undisclosed amount from Equity Bank. It involves bank. By the way, we are not through the stories of the banks. Absa Bank, currently Absa, formerly Barclays, also become embroiled. The reason why I'm reading this is this. There are details, there's even a chart that explains it. It says, Samuel's deceased, owned land 99-year lease. Okay? Ministry of Defense offered to buy the land in 1985. Okay?
85.
Yes, for 3.5 million, but did not go through. Sorry.
Okay.
1990, Solio Construction, partly owned by Moi, was given the land for free. Okay? So the story of it having been paid. This is a chart, okay?
It paying some 85 million. Was it 85
Yes,
million?
that is reported, but yes, okay? They say they paid. There are those who say it was given for free. Uchumi said it bought the land from Solio in 2001 for 85 million.
Okay.
Uchumi says.
Okay.
Money fast.
Uchumi sold the land to Jewel Complex for 330 million paid. In 2003, the lease for LR 2339 had already expired, meaning the land now belonged to the state. Around that
So
time,
by the time Uchumi is selling the land, the lease has expired.
by the time Uchumi was selling the land in 2001, it had not expired.
Okay.
It is in 2003 that it expired. So it expired
2
in
years
2002. Yes. Then the army moved in. But the reporting, how Moi sold Uchumi land. Moi did not sell Uchumi land. A company called Solio Construction, which Moi owned a part of, sold the land. Why didn't they say Solio sold? But it wouldn't really make news if
Who
they
is
didn't bring the
Solio?
Who's going to buy the paper if it didn't have something that was
Yes,
going to
exactly.
draw you in, right?
So Here we go again, our reporting and what actually happened.
Speaking of things that may have been said and actually didn't take place, no deal yet. Senators never agreed on revenue formula.
And what did we report?
That they did.
Remember,
and that we were going to
and there were some
be
tweets the
privy
same
to-
night by.
Yeah. An announcement the next day. 2 weeks after members of a house.
Your turn, is it? Carry on.
I'm
Eric
carrying the
began
baton
with
today.
pylons. Now you have come with homes. Let's carry on with the homes, yes?
Could be home, it's where you hang your hat. Anyway, 2 weeks after members of a House Select Committee told the country that they had hammered out a deal on the controversial division of revenue sharing formula, it is now emerging that it was all hot air. The Standard has established that there was no such deal, and senators had in fact prepared 2 reports after disagreeing on the way forward. The 12-member committee charged with the responsibility of seeking a deal on the matter handed over 2 reports to Senate Majority Leader Samuel Pogisho and Minority Leader James Orengo, and asked them to seek audience with President Uhuru Kenyatta and Opposition Chief Raila Odinga on the way forward. A source aware of the committee deliberations said the salient issue is that the 2 House leaders were to present the reports to the 2 top political leaders so that they can offer leadership and direction. This came as a shocker, especially after the committee went as far as addressing a press conference soon after and declared that there actually was a deal. The debates in the chamber were highly charged as the senators disagreed on the formula. Unable to make any progress, the Senate set up the team to help address the differences. According to some senators who were also members of the committee, the team submitted 2 reports because they could not agree on the best formula given counties gaining insisted that they must gain, while those losing insisted that they cannot lose. So according to Irungu Kangata, Senate Majority Whip, no firm conclusion has been reached. The discussions we had as House leadership were tentative. We will further the discussions. According to the Majority Leader, Samuel Pogisho, what was presented is not final. The documents are work still in progress. We agreed to have a break and look for fresh ideas once the Senate returns. According to Samson Cherargay, we cannot say there is no solution. There is smoke, but it's not white, because we have not captured the aspirations of many people as was expected. And Ledama Olekina says, we expect the House leadership to give direction, but if nothing is achieved, then let them bring the report to the floor of the House so we take a vote yet again. So there is smoke, but it is not white. Whatever was said is actually not. In this case, there is nothing.
Okay. No, it's all right. There's progress.
There is, I agree.
It's okay.
See, there's a new committee. They're not disagreeing wildly.
They're not fighting. They're not
fighting.
saying kill us today.
They're just issuing contradictory statements,
Nothing new.
which shows diversity. It's not all bad.
It's progress.
It's definitely progress. At least we're being told there's smoke. Someone at least has seen smoke.
Yeah, and I think what they need to do is they need to be locked up until the day they come up with one report,
Locked up where?
one solution.
You know what this thing dovetails into. It's an unfortunate history of our electoral processes. I'm bringing electoral process because it's at the heart of what I'm about to say. That every time we near an election, all manner of scandals, imagined, thought of, bizarre, begin to take shape.
Emerge.
Yes. And unfortunately, the dilly-dallying that has taken place in the Senate unfortunately points to this because, again, with our august houses, it has been known that there are members within those houses who have used opportunities such as this one to bargain so that they can be spoken to. Yes, we are in this committee, and even the committees, they have to be representatives. So and so has to be there, and so represents the interests of this and this and this group. And before we agree to do, as has been said, we need to be spoken to this tune.
So this is just raising their stake.
This is bargaining. Yes, we are willing to follow that, but could you please just let us see the light clear? There's some darkness that has engulfed us, and if a certain amount in Kenya shillings came away, you'll be amazed at how we would see with clarity. Because ask yourself really, what is the difficulty here? In all honesty, what is the difficulty here?
It is going back home and saying, we lost X amount of money. Because they already framed that conversation that way a long time ago.
They have framed it.
Once they framed it, they
and it has
just
taken
entered
root.
that rabbit hole.
Yes.
So now you cannot go home and say, you know what, last year's budget, we got 1.2 billion. This year we are getting 0.8 billion.
Not working. Not working. That's
And
a
there's
loss.
an election coming.
It's considered a net loss.
Yeah. And there's an election coming.
And it is you who has brought about that net loss.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough one. Very tough one. Time for another break at 6:45. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, the live stream is up on www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Nduh, before you give us a bit of a brightener of a story in the morning, let me give us this dampener. So, one story here talks about a man who hacked his wife to death and then killed himself. And this was in Nyandarua. 41-year-old Anthony Nganga killed his wife, Njeri, who was 35 years old, in a fight on Sunday night over unclear family issues. A neighbor said the father of two might have used an axe and a kitchen knife, which were recovered at the scene, to commit the crime before hanging himself on a tree within the compound. The neighbors heard distress calls from the children, and when they went to find out what was happening, they stumbled on Wairimu's body lying in a pool of blood inside the house. This is not the first time the couple has been quarreling. It's said that it has ended in tragedy. It is sad that it has ended in tragedy. This is according to another neighbor. Then there's another story here that is also as bizarre and unfortunate. A 16-year-old boy is in police custody after he confessed to killing his younger brother over a, get this, land dispute. 16-year-old younger brother.
How young was his brother?
Villagers of Nyakeore in Kebiringo, Nyamira County are still reeling in shock following the bizarre happening that happened on Friday. According to County Commander of Police Catherine Mogwe, the suspect, who's a Class 8 pupil at a local primary school, struck his 14-year-old brother with a hand hoe, killing him instantly. The two had disagreed over usage of a piece of land. The elder brother wanted to plant napier grass, while his younger brother had planted kales, sparking a quarrel which led to the killing. After killing the brother, he buried him in a pit and later exhumed it, abandoning it at the crime scene. 16, 14, fighting over a piece of land. 14-year-old had planted sukuma wiki. 18-year-old wanted to plant...
16.
The 16-year-old wanted to plant napier grass. Struck him with a djembe.
Wow. But of course, you have to ask questions about intent. Intent to kill?
No.
No.
He did not intend to kill his
I don't
brother.
think he intended to kill his brother.
No.
I think it happened as a result of whatever the altercation was.
But then it brings the question of this conflict resolution method, where people disagree
And then you
viol-
must strike somebody.
Yes, and violence comes in.
Yeah.
Remember, we've had other cases of young people disagreeing over grazing land, over this or the other, and it's all in a rural setting. And the problem arises with someone throwing a stone.
Yep.
Death occurs.
Yep.
Because
In this particular case, though, I'm wondering, so a 14-year-old is a Form 2 child, right?
No.
14 is what?
14,
Is
7, 8.
at 14.
Going to Form 1, yes.
Okay, so let's say
With the 844 system.
standard
yes.
7, 8 going to Form 1 has planted sukuma wiki in a piece of land. The 16-year-old wants to come and plant napier grass. Where are the adults
It is a valid question.
yeah,
in this particular case?
where are the adults in this case? And you want to ask where the adults are because, I mean, in another story, it's just interesting. A 5-year-old girl turns blind after beatings by her father and stepmother over failure to feed her 2-year-old brother and wash his clothes, and for eating omena without the permission of her stepmother. I dare say such a thing has nothing to do with her eating this omena or not washing her brother's clothes. But then you want to look a little bit more at the
So,
relationship.
stepmother of 5-year-old,
The child is not hers.
mother of
The
2-year-old.
2-year-old. So I mean, the violence comes in here, and when you're asking this question about where are the parents, when a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old are the ones then who are making the decisions over what to be planted on a piece of land, where are the parents? And then also this parental responsibility, or even this parental care when it comes to that of a 5-year-old girl, a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old is not even is not even socially matured, right? But you beat her to the point where she has lost her sight because she did not wash the clothes of a 2-year-old, and she
feed him.
ate some food
She was
without
hit on
permission.
the head clearly.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking about stories that involve stepmothers, there are many as they are bizarre.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
I know of a case where a 3-year-old boy stole a mandazi, and the response that the stepmother had was to take both his hands and dip it into hot boiling oil.
Sorry.
Yes. I know. No, not I have heard of. I know.
Hey.
You know, that one scars you for life.
Yeah.
Physically and
For
emotionally.
life, for life. There's no turning around from it.
Oh,
So,
Some of these stories. Okay. Lift our spirits. Give us anything, even if it's a BBI, yes, vote, no.
the government
vote,
has
no,
rolled out
what-
15 billion shillings youth training plan in 17 counties.
15 billion.
Shillings youth training plan
All right.
in 17 counties. The Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs has rolled out another phase of the Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project that seeks to equip the youth with skills to secure self-employment and earn livelihoods. Already, more than 170,000 youth have applied for training under a 15 billion shilling World Bank-funded program. Principal Secretary in the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, Julius Korir, while on a tour to assess the level of preparedness in Kisumu County, said under the Cycle 5 of the program, the government has allocated 400 million shillings to undertake training to successful candidates in the selected 17 counties before they are given grants to set up their businesses. The project, he says, is funded with $150 million credit from the International Development Association and the World Bank. And has also revealed that the government has launched more intensified campaigns to assess the preparedness of the 17 counties implementing the project that include Mombasa, Kilifi, Nairobi, Nakuru, Kiambu, Nyandarua, Mandera, Turkana, Wajir, Bungoma, Kakamega, Kwale, Kisumu, Kisii, Machakos, Kitui, and Migori.
So they're going to train the youth.
Yeah.
And then
Give
them some
essentially
money
some grants to set up a business.
to set up businesses.
Yes.
All right. You know, some of these programs, the only sometimes issue that you have with such programs is that they're disjointed. Because you will find that the youth fund, right, is trying to seek funding to develop a similar program.
Yeah.
You will find that another ministry, or let's say UNESCO, because I know for a fact there was a program that was run by UNESCO supporting the youth fund and it was working with KU University, with the German university. And they'd come up with actually a curriculum on how to train the youth, capacity building around the country, on entrepreneurship, and then the youth would then be able to start their own businesses. And I actually went around auditing that particular project and found a couple of youth who were saying, yes, they went through this training. It was a couple of weeks training, and they started their own businesses. And at least, from the basics of bookkeeping and knowing marketing and such, they were able to start their businesses, and they were flourishing. The Youth Enterprise and Development Fund was running a similar project. Now the Ministry of ICT and Youth and Innovation is running another project. Imagine if all these things were just harmonized and put together and then said, so we have this curriculum, it has been developed, and it was piloted, it was tested, it's being run by the Kenyatta University. So there's faculty at KU and entrepreneurship, so they know this, and they can use this to also continue developing this particular program. Imagine if that was the case. And then you put all of them together, and you can even say we are certifying them. Because the other thing that you would require, that you could take advantage of, is if this particular youth have gone through this basic training, then they get some certificate. They can even go to financial institutions and get credit. Because they have something that is government-backed, that is proper institution-backed, that they can get credit with. Because after they receive this initial funding from the Ministry of ICT, if they need to expand, if they need to upscale their businesses,
then what?
I wish some of these things were basically harmonized. But tough wars will not allow that to happen. Because the ICT and Youth Innovation Ministry wants to have a hand on it. Youth Enterprise Development Fund, I don't know whether now it moved with the State Department for Youth to the ICT. I don't know whether it's under that. You do not know whether the Ministry of Education and
are involved in all of
Technology
this.
and Science and Technology and Higher Learning are involved in this. You don't know whether government partners like UNESCO are involved. It's crazy. It's cray-cray.
Can I tell you one more crazy thing? I know time's running out. But it seems that public primary and secondary schools heads have been thrown into confusion more than they were before. After the Ministry of Education breached the promise to release money to schools last week, the same schools that they said may open in September. Okay. The schools were grappling with huge debts owed to workers and suppliers, with security guards threatening to withdraw their services because of unpaid salaries. The delayed funds have left the head teachers in a dilemma. Maybe CT can explain exactly what would happen in such a case. With some forced to dodge workers who are demanding their salaries, especially after Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang issued a circular last week saying the money had been released. There's nothing in the school account, yet the workers and suppliers think I'm refusing to pay them. This is one principal from Meru County. The delay also complicates schools' preparation for reopening, even as Cabinet Secretary George Magoha hinted that if the COVID-19 infections rates drop, learners may troop back to class before January. Ironically, a number of school heads reported that education officials have been visiting their schools to check on their level of preparedness, where the money they need to pay things has not been released yet.
Okay.
Why dodge? Just explain.
Just tell them the truth. Government supposed to pay has not paid.
Yes,
it's not my money.
It's not you who gets the money. It's the
Tell
money
the truth.
given you to pay.
I don't have it yet. Yeah, so it just. But now I think that would be top layer issues, because now if you want to look below this now, if they haven't received the funds to pay in arrears of what has been waiting for the last few months, and we're looking towards preparedness for the reopening of schools, which is already being touted that could happen before January, how exactly is it going to work?
But it also explains to you the relationship that some of these people have with the people they work with.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, I mean, even to put other things in place. Yesterday, we heard also the Cabinet Secretary saying you need 1 billion shillings to provide washable masks for children to go back to school.
We keep throwing this billion around, this amount. It seems to be the popular buzzword.
1 billion.
Billion.
This one is just one, though. Just 1 billion.
1 billion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. These are washable masks provided in all public schools for all children, as one of the steps towards preparation to go back to school. And that's why I'm saying, even if...
The washable masks, I understand.
Yeah, but
what about the existence of water? You know,
water, there's so many things that need to be put into place. And that's why I'm saying, you know what? It's nice that there's this push and pull to go back to school and open it up and students to be back in school and
the
operations.
reassurance?
but the reassurance that you need to give parents, the reassurance that you need to give students themselves, the reassurance that you need to give the country, the preparation, there's so many things that need to be done and taken into consideration.
And do you hear
The
that
money
being
that they
mentioned?
the money that they also said was needed to work on the infrastructure so that you would have proper social distancing in classrooms, that you'd have ablution centers within schools, so many things. Have they started? As Eric would say, no.
Hujaona kitu. Coming up to the top of the hour, this is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, the live stream is up. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke. Stick around. In the next hour, we'll be speaking with the CEO of the NHIF. So we want to understand a lot of things, including whether NHIF is covering us in these COVID-19 times. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so the police this
Traffic.
morning have themselves been involved in an accident on the Eastern Bypass. There's heavy traffic building up at the GSU roundabout on the Eastern Bypass. A police car across the road involved in an accident. So yeah, hopefully that will be moved away really quickly, seeing as they're involved. However, just approach with caution, guys, if you're on that particular part of the road. Mombasa Road is moving smoothly from Green Park at the river towards Syokimau. You get to Syokimau, however, and right around the SGR, there's a bit of a hold up then as you're trying to get towards the turnoff at the JKIA junction. Getting to General Motors, then you will be fine. But as you get towards Bellevue, it's going to get crazy again. As you then get towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, heading into the CBD, it's going to take you some time because it's going to be bumper-to-bumper traffic all the way to Westlands this morning, and that's what's happening. Coming into the city, though, from the Thika Superhighway, it's not so bad at the Pangani underpass coming from the Muthaiga overpass. Not too crazy at the moment. So we're going to look at other parts of the city in a bit. But it looks like it won't be too much of a crazy Tuesday. We'll keep you aware of what's going on. You also let us know. If you're stuck anywhere or you find an alternate route, Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way
It's
to
also
start your
Kenya's
day.
biggest conversation. And thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. Spice FM, Nairobi 94.4, Malindi 97.7, Njeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nakuru 96.0, 102.5 in Kisumu, Mombasa 87.9, and Nairobi once again 94.4. We're also live for the next 2 hours on KTN Home. I'd like to say a very big welcome to our audience on KTN Home. We're also live streaming the show on www.spicefm.co.ke as well as Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. For the next hour, let's talk about the NHIF, the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Now, NHIF is what we've discussed many times before in this show. I mean, NHIF is one of those critical organizations in the management of healthcare, talking about hospital insurance, the way that NHIF comes to help people, the contributors. Remember, it's a membership scheme. It's those who contribute to NHIF are the ones that are entitled to get the benefits of NHIF. So there was a push around the country for the last couple of years for everybody to at least enroll into NHIF by contributing a certain amount of money. And then you get the benefits, and they expanded the kind of benefits that you would get with NHIF around the country. And then the NHIF has been embroiled in one scandal, just jumping from one into another, from the board to the management of the fund itself, to how the NHIF works with other healthcare providers, the hospitals, the partners, all around, all right? Went into a search for a new CEO. It took about 2 years. Then, in April this year, a new CEO took over. And this is Dr. Peter Kamunyo. And Dr. Peter Kamunyo is going to be speaking to us this morning until about 8 a.m. Dr. Thank you very much for joining us, and very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Latiff, and thank you for having me here.
My team also welcomes you, and my co-host also welcome you to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Nduh and I didn't get the other name.
CT Muga.
CT Muga, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. It's been, about 4 months now into this job?
Yes, it is.
We like saying
it
that people who come onto the show come and occupy the hot seat here when we're interviewing them. I think where you are, that's sufficiently hot enough.
Indeed it is. But I'm using it to warm up in this cold weather.
All right. How has it been in the last 4 months since you took over the helm of NHIF? What have you seen with, you still had experience. You have managed health systems, you've managed insurance and the rest.
Yeah.
But now coming to the helm of this big institution of national importance, just tell us your experience so far.
Yeah. It has been very interesting. Actually, the first thing that hit me is the scale of NHIF. The scale is really big. And if you look at the legacy, starting from 1966, when NHIF was set up as a department in the Ministry of Health, and the evolution to date, because looking at almost 43% of Kenyans in the database of NHIF, here we're talking about almost 22 million lives, with about 9.5 million principal members. We are looking at a very, very large scale. We are looking at an institution that literally touches the lives of almost every other Kenyan. So that was the first thing that I found, and from outside, many people do not see this. I think the other thing is about the number of people that are actually helped every single day. It might come as a surprise to you to know that per month we handle over 1 million outpatient visits and close to 200,000 admissions per month. So when you look at that, it shows you the kind of impact that we have on the lives of Kenyans. So that was the first thing that hit me. The second thing that hit me is that I have a team of people who really are dedicated to what they do. Many people who've been here for quite a while, a couple of new people, but we're very committed team that is here, that we are working together to make sure that we drive this organization to the next level.
And what is that next level?
The next level is a journey that we have been on since 1966. And I would like to take you through that journey a little bit. And that is universal health coverage. Being that everyone has access to quality healthcare that they need without financial impoverishment. Just to give you a bit of a history, I mentioned that in 1966, that's when NHIF was formed as a department. And at that time, the contributions was only 20 shillings. Then, and that was for statutory contributors, formal sector employed people. Then in 1972, there was an amendment of the Act, and that allowed a voluntary membership. So basically the informal sector. Then fast track to about 1998, when now NHIF became a fully fledged parastatal. And then another big milestone, as contributions continued to increase and the rebates to the hospitals continued to increase. In the year 2015, that's when we expanded the benefits to super cover, including outpatient, including very many packages, and it became even more comprehensive in terms of our reimbursement to the hospitals. So in terms of our journey towards UHC, it has been progressive. And what I keep saying is that universal health coverage is not an event. It is a process. It is a journey. And we've been on it for the last 54 years. Now at the point where we are right now, I'm sure you know about many reforms that we have been going through. It's not the first time. There have been a series of them, and all of them have contributed to improving NHIF to a certain level. But more importantly, responding to the needs of the people. Because if you look at the mandate of NHIF, which is number one, to collect contributions from members, to reimburse declared hospitals, and also to protect the funds of contributors. Now, with all this, we are driving and inching closer to universal health coverage. And right now that the membership is open to all, but also looking at how we contribute also on the other side, because we always talk about membership, we always talk about the contributions, but we're not looking at the impact we also have it on the provider level, because with all those visits, they are going to hospitals, and our hospitals range from our category A and B contracts, which are government and faith-based organizations, all the way to our private hospitals, and we contribute a significant amount of revenue also to the hospitals. So when you look at NHIF from that point of view, we are actually sitting at the needers of our being and being able to provide service of healthcare across all the key areas. And then to add on to that, being one of the big four agendas of our Excellency the President in terms of affordable care for all, we are at the point where we are on course to delivering that by the year 2022. So that is where we are going the next level.
It's great as you've painted that picture. Unfortunately, as we look at the NHIF over the years, the picture that people see is that has been riddled by corruption and scandal. So in as much as it's something that is helping people across board when you go in to get medical care and attention, when you look at the face of it, the face that you see of NHIF is one of scandal and corruption. So what steps are being taken to make sure that that image, and not just on face value, but down to the depths of the fund, has been removed?
Great question, Nduh. And I'll probably start from a correction a little bit in terms of the scandals. I think we've also not been telling our story correctly. And when you look at the scandals or what has been coming out in the media, etc., we need to also look at areas that we have been doing well. Now, going back to the reforms have been designed, and what we are looking at to ensure that we reduce any instances of corruption. We ensure that we become fully transparent and accountable. In fact, that's one of the key areas that I'm concentrating on, that we ensure that we are 100% transparent and accountable. And how are we doing this? In part of the reforms, a key part is on our ICT reforms, whereby we're ensuring that we are digitizing all our systems and processes, starting from provider empanelment, ensuring the process of contracting is actually online. You're able to track your progress. If you go to member identification, and that is where we have one of the biggest challenges. You know, it is interesting that when we mention the corruption, and just to give you a bit of perspective, is that of all the contributions that NHIF collects, about 90% goes back to pay for reimbursements to the hospitals and claims. Now, only about 10% is used for administration, and this is to administer and pay emoluments for our 1,900 staff, our 156 service points across the country, et cetera, et cetera. And in terms of our journey towards ensuring that we are accountable and reducing all those instances of malpractice, within the last 3 years, we have reduced our operating costs by 50%, from about 22.1% of our collections to, in the last fiscal year, of 11%. As you can see, it is a journey that we are committed to, but I think what will guarantee the success of it is transparency and accountability. And we're ensuring that all our systems are absolutely transparent. Even in terms of, as I go back to the digitization, member identification, we know one of the biggest areas that even NHIF loses funds is impersonation and fraud, even at the facility levels. And understanding that 90% of what we pay out is actually back to the hospitals, this is an area that we are focusing on. So in terms of, as we are going towards UHC, ensuring that our members are identified biometrically so that this cannot happen. And then in addition to that, after they've accessed the services across our 8,189 providers, that the claims are also submitted electronically through electronic claims.
So do you have a
journey that
do you have a handle on all of this? Because when we look at anything touching on scandal with health in this country, we're often told that there are cartels involved and some amorphous individuals or bodies involved. So you are aware of each and every hole where corruption could have found its way into the fund, and then now being able to plug those holes with identification on where these particular individuals may have been, and very aware then of how to plug it. Hello? Are you there?
Sorry, I didn't get the end of the question.
I'm saying, so now you're very aware of who is involved and where it has been in the past so that you can mitigate for the future.
I think if we're aware about where it all is, we would be able to, nip it. But as you know, things, matters, corruption, they're not done out in the open. So how do we ensure that we minimize that risk? Because one of the key things that I'm also doing is looking at where are the risks that we have and how can we eliminate it. And we know, even as they say in a lot of literature, people steal or there's corruption because of maybe two reasons. Either it is too easy to do it, or there's need. So how do we ensure that it is not easy for this to happen? And one of the things is to have transparent and accountable systems and processes so that you're able to see. And also in terms of being able to project, because when this corruption means there's an abnormal occurrence, because for us as NHIF, and that's why we're ensuring that this process of member identification, member accessing the hospital making a claim, that is all digitized, so that you're not able to falsify that data, because we identify each and every member that we have.
Dr. Kamunye,
it is work in progress.
That would require that you invest heavily on some IT systems, and that would require that all the hospitals that have partnered with you ensure that their IT systems are up at all times. Now, if some of these hospitals are the ones that have been unscrupulous and are the ones that have been lodging these false claims, how do you beat that? How do you ensure that they have their system working at all times and that people do not start going into the hospital and they are frustrated because they're told systems are down, forcing NHIF to reverse some of these plans that they have?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like you see, our vision is to be a world-class social health insurer. So I always start by asking even my team, how does world-class look like? Now, let's go back to your question, because if we're going to be a world-class social health insurer, is whom are we interacting with? We currently have 8,189 providers across the country. And our engagement is contractual with each and every one of these facilities. So there are conditions to be able to operate. Let's also not forget that these hospitals are also in business. They're making a return. So we have agreed that they provide a certain set of services and we compensate them X amount. So in terms of the minimum conditions that we require for them to be able to interact with NHIF, they've already been spelled out. And by the time they sign on the dotted line, there's an agreement that they're going to comply. And this is the only way we'll be able to handle. Remember what I said when we started about the scale. 200,000 admissions per month or 1 million outpatient visits. It's not possible to handle that without a digital platform. So that is our focus. And indeed, we are investing a lot in that area. We've had our legacy system, which has carried us to this point. And at this particular point in time, we are undergoing reforms to have a new and improved system to be able to handle this. So it is necessary for the providers that we interact with to have these tools. And we know Kenya is leading in terms of digital connectivity, etc. And to be able to support that, also the Ministry of Health is looking at it to ensure also all the public health facilities. We have our electronic medical records, and this is work in progress. So this is the transformation that I was mentioning that we are at the point of getting to the end of.
Dr. When fully implemented, what will universal healthcare look like?
Great. I actually have a very simple answer to that. And I would like you to look at the way NHIF is now, because I believe NHIF is the foundation and is the tool that that will deliver universal health coverage. Right now, we have 3 groups of members. Number one is the statutory or formal sector. And then number 2 is the voluntary contributors. Now, the voluntary contributors, because for the statutory contributors, we have almost about slightly over 80% retention. Now, for the voluntary contributors, that's where it keeps seesawing. So there are people who pay when they have need, and then others just don't pay, they forget. And then we have a third group that cannot afford at all. And these are the people we call the indigents. Now, for me, how I see universal health coverage looking like is that the group that is statutory contributors or the formal sector to continue doing that because they have access, and with the expanded coverage, it can cover. Then number 2, the voluntary contributors to be encouraged, or maybe even to some extent be obligated to pay for NHIF. Then number 3, the indigents, that we find that they are sponsored to do this. And if you look at even NHIF and what the government has been doing to support the indigents, I'm sure you've heard about the health insurance subsidy program for orphaned and vulnerable children, for the elderly. We have Nduh Okoh, we have Linda Mama, which since inception has assisted over 2.6 million women access maternal child health services who had no insurance. So by having the group that cannot afford to pay at all, or the indigents, sponsored, then we'll be able to achieve universal health coverage. So that is how I see UHC. And using a platform like NHIF, which is transparent and reimburses both from primary care services to some tertiary services would be ideal. Then after that, for the folk who feel that they need extra added benefits and they can afford, then they can have other private insurance in addition to the services and coverage benefits that we offer as NHIF.
Talking of these benefits, how exactly has NHIF structured its functions to ensure that every Kenyan who is either a member or a possible or a potential member actually knows and understands the benefits and all these wonderful things that we are saying here?
Yeah. I will also confess a little bit that we've not been telling our story well, but we have been telling it, and we are continuing to. We have tried to reach as many people, and I think even traditionally you've seen the in trying to get to mass media, the road shows that we've done, etc. But we know that with the scale of what we're doing, getting onto the digital platforms is one of the best. And over the last couple of months, we've also enhanced our personal digital platforms. So you can actually register onto NHIF from the comfort of your phone, both the smartphones and also the analog phones. You can select the provider of choice for capitation through that. Through the mobile app, we actually have a mobile app called My NHIF, and I hope that if you don't have it already, by the end of this show, you'll have downloaded it to your phones, where you'll be able to see the benefits, you'll be able to see all that. Then, in addition to that, in the last actually 2 months, we have enhanced our state-of-the-art call center so that we can be able to interact with not only our members, but also all our other stakeholders in real time. So, and within the last 2 months, we've actually increased the number of calls that we handle by over 7 times within the last 2 months. So these are ways that we are ensuring that we are tuned to be able to respond to the needs of our members and also stakeholders.
All right, so we want to take a quick break here, Dr. Kamunyo. We are speaking with Dr. Peter Kamunyo. He is the CEO of NHIF, trying to understand NHIF, the reforms that he has in place. He's just been in office for just about 4 months since his appointment. And then we want to look deeper into the corporate governance structure of NHIF, how to get rid of the bad image that NHIF has had over the last couple of years. And he's saying, we haven't been telling our story as well as we should have. So we want to understand, so how else are you going to tell the story that should have been told? This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 27 minutes after 7. Let's take a break on Spice FM, KT and Home and Online. We'll be back shortly.
Okay, cloudy conditions where the sun was peeking out in Nairobi, that seems to have disappeared. We'll see highs of 18 in Nairobi today at 12 degrees currently, and those cloudy conditions will continue through most parts of the morning. Nakuru is partly cloudy at 14 degrees. Nyeri also the same at 13 and rising ever so slightly today. In Eldoret, for example, it's sunny at 14 degrees and will continue with these conditions throughout till the evening. Looking into Kisumu, though, the weather is partly cloudy at 19 degrees. We'll go to a high of 26. And in Kakamega, sunny conditions at 16. We'll change to thunderstorms later with highs of 24. In Mombasa, it's 23 degrees and partly cloudy. It was raining earlier on, and likely that the rains will come back later. Malindi at 24 degrees will rise to a high of 30 and come down to lows of 23. Let's look out of the country. We're in Kampala. Now 21 degrees and partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the morning. And there's a chance of rain later, going to highs of 27. It's a cloudy and foggy day in Dar es Salaam this morning. 21 degrees and then going into partly cloudy conditions later, rising to a high of 30. 12 degrees now in Johannesburg, warming up, and we'll see highs of 18 and lows of 11. And in Lagos, clear skies at 25 degrees, leading to an afternoon and an evening of rain and reaching a high of 27. It's quite crazy on the Eastern Bypass this morning. There was an accident involving a police vehicle today. That's still not been cleared up for whatever reason. And so traffic then heading in that direction is chocker blocked bumper to bumper. It's going all the way as far back as Taj Mall. And this will see it snake very, very slowly then out towards Utawala this morning. So as you approach the area, just beware that that's what you're going to meet in front of you, and there's going to be quite some traffic for some time. Mombasa Road is as normal, picking up with traffic from the SGR all the way past Cabanas until you approach General Motors, and it'll be this way as you go past Bellevue and then try to approach the Nyayo Stadium roundabouts. Coming off of Langata Road, either towards Bagavi Way or then towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, also not too bad. It's moving as would be expected. Coming out of Westlands and into the CBD, right around University Way roundabout as well, is looking good. Coming out of the Thika Superhighway as well, it's bumper-to-bumper traffic, but as is expected, nothing too crazy at the moment. Reach us on Spice FM KE on Twitter, just in case you get stuck or you find a better route.
Half past 7. Good morning, and how are you doing? Welcome to September. It's the first day of the new month, and this is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning, as always, is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, and joining us on the line is the new CEO of the National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF, Dr. Peter Kamunyo. And before we went into the break, you were explaining and trying to paint the picture for us of how universal health coverage will look like and the successful implementation of this universal health coverage. CT, you had a follow-up question to that.
What I wanted to ask was, a lot of the innovations that are being made by NHIF, as is being reported by the CEO, have to do with internet connectivity, technological advances, excellent. But there is a very huge population in this country who do not have that connectivity, neither are they able to have it. What has NHIF done to reach these people? I'm actually going back to what I asked, and I'm expanding the question.
Great. And so we have, and actually that's where we started from. And one of the things that we have done is to expand our branch network. We have 70 fully fledged branches across all the counties in Kenya. We have another about 52 in all Huduma centers across the country. And then the rest is, to make 156, is our satellite offices. So in addition to all the other channels that we have to be able to reach our members or stakeholders, we have expanded our footprint on the ground. And these are also staffed by trained personnel who understand the services, and some of them in certain communities are able to relate and communicate to those communities. Now, in addition to that, we also partner with the counties, and in fact, as because we're still in that topic of universal health coverage, up to now, about 20 counties have actually identified a few or a couple of indigents in their regions and paid for them. So when we're going through this exercise, we involve the county infrastructure to be able to get to the grassroots, as well as in conjunction with our branches and our satellite offices and presence in all Huduma centers across the country. So that is one way to be able to get to those who can't.
Now, let's look back at the beginning of this year. And NHIF started the year on really a bad note with very many contributors, with the proposal to raise the rates and also to come up with new restrictions. For example, saying that new members were to pay 6,000 shillings and then wait for 3 months before becoming eligible for the cover. Raised a serious outcry with the public. It had to take the president's intervention to say halt this. Where are you on this? Do you think that this is a route that you want to try again with us, or are you reworking a way in which you can introduce this to us in a more palatable dose?
Okay. Yeah, I think the first thing that that we need to do is to understand how the system works. This is an insurance model whereby what the contribution that you pay, then you have a promise of a certain set of benefits. And those benefits are a lot more than what you have contributed. But how then is it designed to work? It's designed to work because with everyone contributing, not everyone will get sick and not everyone will use those services. So with that, that is now the pooling of their finances, and then we are able to handle the risk of the people who would require healthcare. Now, the challenge that we've been having, and I alluded to it earlier on, and it is a challenge not only for NHIF, but for all third-party payers across the globe, is that unless it is obligated so that you have a critical mass of contributors, when it is voluntary, what many folk do is that you wait until you have a need to pay. So especially after we expanded our offerings, so you can get a hip replacement now, you can go for major surgery, dialysis is covered, etc., etc. So a lot of people were waiting when they're diagnosed with a certain condition and they need to have treatment. That's when they start paying so they can access. If you look at this critically, what does it mean? It's almost like buying money. So you pay your 6,000 shillings and get your 130,000 shilling benefit. So how can we mitigate for that? Mitigating for that is to ensure that first we have critical mass, that as many people enroll as possible, but also, at the other hand, is to avoid this adverse selection of folks who, when they have the need, that's when they're joining. And if you look at some of our benefits, because even for specialized surgery, it can go up to $500,000. So if somebody pays 6,000 shillings just to come in and use $500,000, even if they continued being our member, how many years would they need to be our member even to be able to recover that?
Could all of this be because all of this be because people just don't know exactly what is on the table that could be of benefit by NHIF, and then couldn't you go a little bit further in then making this information pop and plain to the average Kenyan in terms of what is available should they contribute regularly?
Yes, actually, you're spot on on that, and that is one of the key interventions that we are having in terms of being able to communicate. But you know, also it also involves a little bit of behavior change as well, and that is one of the key areas that we are actually going to focus on, because the benefits literally far outweigh. And I would like just to give you a little bit more of perspective, because earlier I mentioned that like the statutory contributors, their retention is over 80%. For the voluntary contributors, as at end of the last fiscal year, is at a paltry 23%. And of these 23% who are present now, the chances are probably they were not the ones who were there last year or the year before. So this contributes to a lot of that adverse selection. So what we've been saying, and that is where, if you're to really say what is the one big problem that we have, I would say it is that the voluntary contributors are not sustaining their membership. And if we can get a way to do that through what you're suggesting in terms of communicating about the benefits, this is what you'll gain. But also, on the other hand, making it even a bit more easier, because right now, I think what we have is you have to make the decision that let me pay my 500 bob now. If we can have a way that it can be obligated, it would become easier for that to be, because even the other systems ride on the benefits that NHIF offers. So I do indeed agree with you.
You said you had a membership of, is it 9.5 million?
Yes, that is the total membership, but the active members are about 5.1 million.
Okay, now
So
what,
you can see, yes.
Daktari, how many members can you possibly have given the working population of this country, or those who are able to work? If you were to get everyone who is able to join NHIF, what would that number be?
Let me answer that question in a different way. To get to universal health coverage, we need to have at least 80% of the population covered. So, number one would be all the members who have been members to continue being members. So there we are at 22 million, based on the 9.5 million principals and their spouses and children, making 22 million. So another 20 million, and we'll get there to absolute universal health coverage.
I think you know where I'm going with my question, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, because there are all these people who are not enrolled as members. What are you doing to ensure that they are enrolled so that this discussion becomes a different discussion?
Yes, and that is what we have been doing in terms of increasing enrollment of members. If you look back, even our engagements with the counties is to increase the membership.
How's that working?
But I would like us to look at it, peel it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in terms of the number of members and new members we get every year, it keeps increasing. But at the same time, the members who joined last year, after they've accessed their service, they drop off. The members who join again, they drop off. So the key is to ensure that sustainability. So every time we go on a recruitment drive, you find it's the new people who have an acute need who join. So in terms of educating about why it is important to continuously be a member or obligate that would be the way to sustain it. And this is a challenge that is there also in many other countries whereby you're getting voluntary contributions for an insurance scheme.
Have you noticed how effective and how persistent and how irritating these gambling organizations are? I think, yes. Now, they never let you breathe. Now, do you then have any doubt as to why they were so successful to the point where they ensnared very many young Kenyans and continue to do so? Yeah. Now, when you see a tactic that works, what you're offering doesn't actually have any negative effects. It's actually a win-win right throughout. But the win-win is being hampered by the manner in which you're going about the business of ensuring you get the best out of it. I am speaking, and I'm fully aware that you're just recently into the job. But surely, the health of Kenyans should take a very, should we say, a pivotal position in the functioning and the operations of NHIF. Wouldn't you say?
I totally agree with you. And it's a good example you've used, especially that one about the betting, etc. But also when you look at the human behavior, people paying for something that might or might not happen, basically I'm talking about the concept of insurance, very few people, embrace that, So it is how we also continuously convince. And I totally agree with you that is a constant communication, is the literally being in your face in terms of this is what will happen, this is what will happen. But maybe also having consequences with it to promote, because like obligating, like if you're going to get certain licenses, and let me give you a good example, like the borders, for example. They are all over the road, and you know that they are exposed to the dangers of the road traffic accidents, etc. And if they don't have NHIF, who pays for that? But if they can afford to also have that border on the road, can afford 500 shillings a month to cover not only them, including their family.
Can I
And
jump
so-
in there as you go on? Because the thing is,
Sure.
if there, it's not just about having the 500 shillings that Terry, but it's also about having an understanding of what that 500 shillings translates to. So if I have the 500 shillings, right, and I'm looking at a kilo of flour and I'm looking at a kilo of something else, and I can see the benefit that has in my life today, as opposed to 500 shillings hanging somewhere in the clouds that maybe I can use in the future if I get hurt without any kind of grounded explanation, then it makes it a bit difficult. You'd be surprised, and maybe this could be of help to you, but you'd be surprised that how many people just do not know what that money that they would contribute voluntarily or otherwise every month. So maybe I could ask you a question then. What are Kenyans assured of with their voluntary contribution every month in the event that they get sick?
And before you come to answer that, Dr. I have a caller here from Kahawa Sukari in Nairobi, and this is Muigai. I think he wants also to contribute to the conversation. Muigai, good morning. Hello? All right, I think he's taken a bit of a break. So once he gets back, we'll get into that question. So just respond to that. I mean, what is it that we are assured of getting once you pay this 500 bob a month? Dr. Kamunyo. Dr. We are on you. We're saying, so what is it that you would get once you get this 500 shillings a month? What is it that you're assured of getting with NHIF? We're having a technical issue here. I think something happening with the lines and all. Our signal getting to Dr. Kamunyo and him getting back to us. The conversation continues. We are speaking with Dr. Peter Kamunyo. He is the CEO of the National Hospital Insurance Fund. He is joining us on the line. He's explaining, the workings of NHIF, the challenges that NHIF has had with the entire system. And I don't know if you can now get us, Dr. Kamunyo. Are you on the line?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yep. So you were saying, I mean, among the things that he also mentioned was a behavioral change campaign with the people. If you look at what you said, the betting organizations, what they were actually pushing is that behavior change. So they're onto your face all the time.
And the benefits.
And they're showing you the benefit on a regular basis. And also, as when he comes back, I'm going to also add to the question of looking at 500 shillings a month or just breaking it down into a daily. Very many of these
You
circles,
go to the heart of it, Eric.
very many of these circles tell their members just contribute 10 bob a day. And they'll tell you they contributed 10 bob a day or 100 bob a day
And
or
this is
something
what
like
they
that.
got.
And this is what they got.
Yes.
They went
And
to
this 500, if it's 5 days a weekend, you contribute 25 shillings.
Yeah.
500 is daunting. 25 shillings is not.
Makes sense.
not.
Absolutely. It makes sense because if you break it down with the things that you would normally be doing on a daily basis, truly, that's what people are doing. You're spending 100 shillings on food, where you break it down where you're getting 10 shillings, 20 shillings on flour. This is, we're not talking about sounding as rudimentary as we can. It's actually what is happening. So you can imagine if your healthcare also is broken down into a piece that you would also understand.
And you can
25
afford.
shillings, and I can afford it because I'm also spending a similar or even lesser amount on food.
And
Right?
that 25 shillings you can look for. It's something that's achievable.
You can say, so in the event that my children get sick or I get sick, right? I have put away 25 shillings every day and I know that they will be taken care of. I don't have to go and ask people for money.
Yes.
So it makes sense that way, as opposed at the end of the month, 500 shillings, somebody's looking at you and saying it's not going to happen. Sorry.
25 shillings, believe me, makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense for me.
Yes. Because you're talking about 125 shillings, 5 days. It makes a lot of sense. Even when you think of just the workings of that amount, it's something. Again, it's thinking through what it is you need to communicate so that it resonates with the people who are likely to actually pay or contribute towards it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I don't know that it's people running away from of responsibility when it comes to healthcare. I think it's an absolute disassociation with, this thing, there's a fund that we all contribute to or that we are supposed to contribute to, but how does it actually help me as an individual? And I feel that if we had that comprehension, you wouldn't need to look for people to join.
Eric got it spot
They
on.
would come straight to you.
What SACCOs do, and even what some banks do, they break it down. These payments, they're broken down on a daily basis.
Into
And believe
literally
me, it becomes very, very
bite-sized
affordable.
pieces.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the basic understanding of not just salesmanship but marketing always hinges on looking at markets that you are with a possibility of capturing and which haven't been captured. Now, your growth is dependent on how you actually capture this. Any individual who is an adult, and every year we have people entering adulthood in this country, and they're in large numbers. You target them from the time even when they're in university and onwards, even secondary school and onwards, thinking ahead. So that it's part and parcel of their planning when they think of their lives and what they plan to do when they enter the job market. So as part of what they do, they look into their health. You will never lack for contributors.
No.
And you'll have a mechanism that the contributors can actually resonate with and which they can participate in.
I think the insurance conversation and the savings conversation is a conversation that even goes beyond players such as NHIF.
It does.
It goes to the regulators.
It does.
And the regulators have a duty to create that education and awareness. So, for instance, if you talk about insurance, go to any person and ask them about insurance. Those that pay for motor vehicle insurance pay for motor vehicle insurance because it's mandatory.
Yes.
And that's it. So I'm required to have insurance stick on my car, and that's what I have.
It's a compliance
It's
issue.
just a compliance issue. Not because you can see the need for this, not because it really makes sense or you see that you can derive the benefits from it. And also then looking at the various insurance packages. How many people know the difference between comprehensive and third-party insurance? Getting to a point where the other day I was seeing advertisements by the Insurance Regulatory Authority talking about comprehensive cover and that the driver is not covered in the comprehensive. And there you are thinking, but I thought that's why I was taking comprehensive.
Yes.
So that all of us in that vehicle are covered. So you start wondering, okay, this is a
So
kind
how do I
of...
cover myself?
So how do I cover
And
myself
I'm the man who
then?
drives this car. most
It's
of
my
the time,
car. I
yes.
have paid insurance for it. So this is where the IRA comes in, because they have a duty to continuously explain to people, to teach people,
Educate.
and even bringing it to the school level and working with KICD to inject part of that in the curriculum. So as you grow up, as you're going through school, as you're going through education, you already have a better understanding of what insurance is, and not just looking at it from that finance point of view of insurance and all. And the people who hate math dropped
Done with that.
Yeah, they dropped business education or finance or commerce, and they moved on. Yet you need it at a point in future. Also, maybe the CBK as well, and the Banking Association, creating awareness about savings culture. It's the same kind of thing. So if we're talking about having more people joining a scheme such as this one, and you're talking about universal health coverage, understanding what universal health coverage is and what the benefits would be, that would need to have started earlier.
Yes, it does. And also partnering with other institutions that already have groupings of people within them, whether it's a chama, whatever you want to call it, whether it's the Border Association, whether it's the Fertilizer Group Association, the DIP, the Cattle Dip Association. Yes, because all these organizations exist within our communities and they have memberships. So when you address them and the people whose voices they listen to also address them, then you actually find resonance with your message.
Your message,
Yes.
absolutely.
But it's on an ICT platform. It's on TV. Okay. Let's see how far that goes.
Yeah. One thing for sure, though, is that from various interactions with NHIF, even in the media, you'll see that they have those barazas. So they'll attend a meeting somewhere in the village, where there are people who are meeting, especially using now the political structures, the governors, the counties, the county meetings. And that's why he was talking about the recruitment drive, using those structures. Now, if you can extend that beyond the political side, also going into the other community groupings.
You know, the Baraza is an excellent idea. Every day in hospitals, you have what you call a health talk. I have never heard a health talk including NHIF issues. I've never. And yet, This is something that happens every single day, and people listen.
Perfect opportunity to use something like that.
Yes, it's whether you've taken someone to the hospital or
Yeah.
you've taken yourself, but you get to hear it, and there's no better place to sell it. Meaning, go out of your way to sell it. I am bringing up this issue because I feel NHIF has not explored every avenue open to it to sell its wonderful services. Because the services that NHIF offers are truly wonderful. They truly are wonderful.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we developed a technical issue with our lines, and therefore our conversation with the NHIF CEO was cut short. Unfortunately, we'll continue this conversation some other day when we'll invite him, and so we can delve more into the conversation with NHIF. Dr. Peter Kamunyo is the CEO of the National Hospital Insurance Fund. He joined us this morning, explaining to us how NHIF is working, the kind of reforms that he's putting in place, he and his management team, with support of the board, putting in place so that you can see a better NHIF that's able to deliver this crucial national program that is the universal health coverage. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Time to take a break on Spice FM and KTN Home. We'll be back shortly. Just keep it right here. It's 5 minutes to 8. Four minutes to 8 o'clock. All right, so the conversation continues, and looking at universal health coverage and what is required for universal health coverage, just understanding as well the universal health coverage. The president seems to be resolute on trying to push ahead this agenda as far as possible, as much as possible, to see whether it will work and get to a point where it then works for the country. The picture of universal health coverage that you asked him to paint, did you feel like he painted that picture? Did
No. He didn't, and maybe I am the one who didn't ask it in a way that would help him paint it better. What I was angling for was, if I am on universal health coverage and I'm on Ainchi in village X,
Yeah. Directly.
my village, Tamu, in Muhoroni constituency, what would my neighbor who
What
has
did they
that
call your
coverage?
village, Tamu?
Tamu, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's called Tamu.
Meaning what?
For a minute.
It's called Tamu.
Is it Tamu
Tamu
or
like
Tamu?
sweet.
No, we tend to be democratic about these things. We allow you to envision what you think it should be. But it is still spelled the same.
I'm going to go with sweet,
Meaning
sweetie.
It's called
Sweetie.
Tamu. Okay. Remember, it was a sugarcane growing area.
Ah, there you go.
Told you it was sweet.
It still is a sugarcane growing area. Okay. Sugar belt. Okay. Now, what would my neighbor, whose son has just turned 18 and is on universal health care, what would this card mean to them?
Yep.
Should they fall ill? What is the translation? You are on universal health care. What does it translate to you?
Essentially, what it means that you would be able to go into any medical facility, any public facility in the country, and get medical services free of charge.
It's not really free, is it?
Well, because
Not
you made a contribution, right? But
And does it also cover 100% of everything?
And who does
That's
it
what-
cover and who
that-
does it not cover?
that's what the aim would be. That anybody who walked into a medical facility could be covered. And I know these other questions of pre-existing conditions and such come into play. So now that was the thing. Removing all of this whole idea of pre-existing conditions, you come into hospital with a need and you're taken care of by virtue of the fact that the government has buffered the systems well enough to make sure that you're taken care of.
You see, in the absence of that information, then the importance of the value of it is diminished significantly.
The closest,
In the list of priorities, it goes right at the back because people don't anticipate falling sick.
Of course not. Of course not. But the system that it would mirror the closest that we have in the world is that of the NHS in the UK, whereby your taxes translate directly to healthcare. And they've set up a system almost so well that you walk into hospital, no matter what it is that you're suffering from, you're taken care of, and you don't have to remove an extra shilling or an extra pound, in this case, out of your pocket, because at tax point, that has been taken care of. So looking at UHC and what Kenya is trying to do and what the government is trying to do, the closest system that mirrors that is the NHS in the UK, so that you don't have to use anything extra to take care of whatever condition that you have. I can see it. I can see what they're trying to do. But there's so many things that have to come into play in order to get that.
A lot of communication. So
Very, very
have everybody
much.
on board. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's 8 o'clock.
Okay, so as everybody else gets on the roads this morning and getting towards the Eastern Bypass, we're going to see heightened levels of traffic because of that early morning accident that took place. And then now what we see right around what was the Taj Mall, heading in that direction, it is a bumper-to-bumper situation, guys. Hopefully it will dissipate, but for now, if you're headed in that way, you're going to have to sit it out and apply a little bit of patience to everything else. Okay, where else do we have a problem today? Uhuru Highway is going to be like that for the next couple of weeks because of the construction that's taking place for the expressway. That's what we see and that's what we expect. Entering into the CBD, coming in through the Globe Cinema overpass shouldn't be too bad either. Headed towards Westlands or headed towards Forest Road, if you're coming out of there, shouldn't be too bad. Coming off Mombasa Road, we know also the clog up that we expect at this hour, right in the middle of traffic hour, shouldn't be there for too long. If you are stuck, you see something that we should know about and warn others of, please do tell. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Okay, 2.5 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and on KTN Home, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I can see some comments coming in. Dr Mageto says, did they see you literally run? It's early morning. Network issue is bad excuse. Actually, Jackton, it's actually a network issue. And this is not on his end, it's on our end. It's on our end. He was still online until we got to the top of the hour. So he was already, he was seated, he was waiting for us to continue the conversation. Jadwong Papadopoulos says, and this is written very well, Jadwong. NHIF should invest highly on preventive healthcare. This is the future of health insurance. Waiting for patients to get sick and then paying for treatment is not the way to go. Is that NHIF's role? Is that the ministry's role? Because we're talking about provision of the health service.
I don't understand waiting for people to get sick. Actually, you cannot seek health care if you do not need the care. And to need care, it means you're not well. Yeah, so it's not a question of waiting. It's just, It's a contingency measure that is put in place to ensure that in the event that someone inadvertently falls ill, they can be taken care of. It's a future plan, a mitigation. That's what it is.
The question, though, seems to be talking about NHIF investing in the preventive health insurance, right? So, like in public health programs.
That is not its mandate.
That's not the mandate of NHIF because it's an insurance fund.
You have a healthcare service in this country, and it is headed by a ministry called the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health has public health officers. Now, those are the people whose job it is to do what you're asking, to ensure that the communities within which they work stay healthy.
Yep.
The aforementioned health talks, these are some of the preventative measures that these institutions carry out.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
The fund is to make sure, in this case, to ensure that should you need medical attention, that it is paid for by virtue of your contributions, and they can spread it out, do something with those contributions that you make on a monthly basis and grow it so that should you get sick in the future, you don't have to remove anything extra from your pocket to pay for this medical care. Right. So.
And the issue, by the way, brings up the conversation, and you've talked about this very many times, investing in the public health system.
Yes.
During
the preventative
aspects, right? During yesterday's national conference on the counties and the reaction to COVID-19, among the things that a committee headed by Kisumu Governor Professor Anyang' Nyong'o that's looking at what to do in terms of recovery, among the things that they recommended, and the members of that are Kivuta Kibwana and the Laikipia Governor Njeri Thorne, they said, you know what we are learning now is the importance of investing heavily on the preventative aspect of healthcare. Because just by telling people to wash their hands now in the fight against COVID-19 has reduced the number of people who are going to seek health services for the other common issues.
The non-COVID
health issues.
Yes.
So if you invest heavily on the preventive healthcare side of things, then you also ensure that your health facilities are not dealing with things that they shouldn't be dealing with. I mean, and this is a pretty obvious thing. I mean, we have a director of public health, the same way we have Dr. Amoth on the other side of medical. We have somebody who's the Director General of Public Health.
Yes, we do. And also remember, research has been done and it has been proven conclusively, if I may add, that when you take this preventative aspect, and it's really basic, even if you go to the point of dealing with diseases that are prevalent in communities, diarrheal diseases, malaria. By the way, these are things that can be diagnosed syndromically by a layperson. And you can tell this is what you need, and even medication can be provided for at the level of a community without going to any dispensary or health facility, none whatsoever. All I'm saying is that the focus has been on the curative for so long that we've actually forgotten that people don't have to fall sick.
Yeah.
It has been when I fall sick. The thing is, you don't have to.
You don't have to fall sick.
Yes. And should you fall sick, you don't even need to go to hospital. It can be managed. That's why the concept of dispensaries were created. So that at the very village level, the smallest community unit that you think of, healthcare can be provided. Now, over time, remember, if we go down memory lane, we had what you called field extension workers. You had them in agriculture, you had them in health, you had them in what? And what they did, rotationally on a weekly basis, they would go, not village, household to household, they were barazas, and they would continue to educate the community weekly and household to household. And anytime there was a problem in a household, they were on standby, they would go and attend to it. They would go. So it meant that a lot of these problems that would then make for the visit to the health facility were reduced to a minimum.
What changed? What made that change? Because yes, you're talking about that. They had the simple names, Grigasha, Health.
Yes,
they were known. I mean,
they were known.
They were known in the village,
and that's what they did.
So what is it? Was it a policy direction that changed this?
No, it's our focus. Remember, we also had legislated in our municipalities a requirement for anyone who was putting up a certain structure to have a water harvesting system, as in a gutter. It was mandatory when you're putting up a building. Some of these things just get neglected over time, And then the thinking and feeling that anyway, there's piped water, there's enough water, so things that previously were used as a mediation mechanism is simply lost.
Yeah.
That's it. And then as more hospitals came into being, it was understood that when you're unwell, a generation came by who didn't know of the existence of these personnel. So they dealt with what they came into contact with. And then came the notion of the community health worker. If you were to ask any health facility how many community health workers you have, you'd be shocked. You can find the equivalent of a sub-district hospital as one or two. And now can you imagine what a sub-county is like?
Yeah.
So you wonder, so what is this person supposed to do exactly? And then there was the reliance on activities, health activities that were funded by donors. Now they provided for these community health workers to look at the blood service in this country and what the absence of the donor funding did to it is the same thing that happens to healthcare services, which were being supplemented by this. Suddenly, something which is mandatory and which is cost effective, it wasn't taken up by the government, it wasn't given priority. So it didn't happen. And yet it's not something that is difficult to do. Now, COVID is bringing those ideas back. The understanding that, you know something, there are things that can be done at a community level and the community can actually do it.
It's essentially going back to the basics.
Yes.
Because that is what was happening at that time.
Yes.
Basic, fundamental things that were taking place in terms of people's health, in terms of the country's health. There was somebody there was somebody that you could go to who would take care of certain things. If, the normal fever that you would have, there was somebody who would be able to attend to you.
Yes.
At dispensary level. But you see what has happened now because of that gap that has been created. People then are living through symptoms. A situation exacerbates, and then you have to get to the point whereby things are critical or, unfortunately, in some cases, terminal that would have been dealt with at the basic level. So I think that's what it does, is that it's making us go back to the basics to have some things sorted out.
Whatever
and there's absolutely nothing
whatever
wrong
takes you
with
to
that.
hospital doesn't start with something.
It doesn't start with the pain that you're feeling. At
No,
that
no,
point.
that
It's
is
something that
life-threatening. It never starts that way.
That's true.
It grows and it's allowed to grow. Then it gets to a point where it's life-threatening. Now, again, COVID has provided an opportunity for us to give this particular subject a second look and to put in place things that will last a lot. Should you say a longer test of time? Yes, because it's not something that is difficult to do. It's not something that is difficult to implement. And yet, it saves in terms of money. Every health visit to a hospital costs. It costs the individual who goes there in terms of time, in terms of money, given the distances. And, my friend, it puts a heavy burden on the health sector.
I'm looking at something as basic as washing hands, right?
Yes.
And what did we see even in COVID times? That then a lot of the other diseases that we would normally deal with, dysentery and diarrhea and other things, you've seen a reduction of such reporting because of the fact that more people are washing their hands. Again, another example of going back to the basics to figure this out. Now, in terms of figuring out health coverage for the country, perhaps that's what it needs to be looked at, as opposed to looking at this huge thing that we really are not able to figure out. But how about going back to the basics and saying, look, guys, to be able to work on this thing, you actually need a basic understanding of what's going around, or rather what's going on around you, and saying, can we deal with 1, 2, 3? If we're able to deal with the basics, then dealing with the things that would be a little bit more complicated would be slightly easier. And so when we look at and hear this whole UHC and we get confused in an instant, it's possible that we are failing to look at the very basic that is required when it comes to healthcare. And if that can be addressed, then this whole thing of all this money that's needed, or all this attention, or all this personnel probably would not come into play.
It wouldn't really matter, right? It would be something that we can really do. Let's switch conversations now and talk about the environment. So start from the basics. Kenya has banned the use of single-use plastics and the small plastics, and just the other day expanded the definition of the single-use plastics that are not allowed, especially now in protected areas like the national parks and the public beaches, right? And this has been hailed, not just in the country, but also globally, because Kenya is taking that step of protecting the environment, of understanding the dangers that plastics have had on our environment, and our future generations as well, running all those awareness campaigns on the dangers of using single-use plastics, especially this, the small micro gauge plastics, and what the impact of that would be. So this also, we've got to bear in mind, it's not a conversation that just started when the former CS, Nduh Okoh, just went and gazetted the date for the commencement of this. There had been some other start-stops on just banning the use of jualas, as we call them. There had been other start-stops when, in the Kibaki administration, there had been talk of it, and then there was this conversation by the government saying, we have listened to the manufacturers who are saying that they're not ready, so we're going to give them time to get ready. During the time as well, when the CS Nduh Okoh gazetted this, there was still some bit of pushback from the manufacturers saying, we have just invested heavily on machines that are going to produce this, and so this is going to be lead us to a loss. But the government stood firm and said, no, come on.
We can't.
We have already had this conversation for a while, so this is it. We still, of course, see them infiltrating the market, but to a very small extent. The greater part of this is that the use of single-use plastics, win-win. Where are we now on that?
Well, things might change a little bit. We know that certain things are taking place with US-Africa trade relations, those talks that are happening. One of the biggest countries, or rather one of the biggest organizations in the world that deals with chemicals and the manufacturing and production of the same, is having a conversation with the United States government, as well as the Kenyan government at this point, and talking about the fact that because they want to enter into this whole play, they're asking that Kenya reconsiders its move to ban some of these things in the country, because essentially what this would allow is that it would allow dumping of waste in the country of Kenya right now. Now, it's interesting because when you look at the conversation that you just spoke of now, Eric, is that there were manufacturers, Kenyan companies, who asked the government to please reconsider the timing of this ban because they had just invested heavily in the machinery that would allow them to then produce in the country. And the government took the stance and said, absolutely not. We've made this decision. This is where we are. Now, look at the conversation that is taking place now, US-Africa trade. Kenya, obviously, is one of the biggest economies on the continent, having a major seat at the table when it comes to these negotiations. But then being asked by one of the largest companies, because of some commercial trade-off, to then take a step back in the stance on the original position when it comes to what will happen to the environment with the dumping of waste in the country. So it's a big deal right now, and it seems to want to just slip through in these negotiations without anybody really knowing what is going on. But essentially, with the entrance of these organizations into this deal, into these negotiations, that is exactly what's going to happen. Kenya could essentially become a dumping ground for a lot of waste that will be produced by one of these companies.
There's an article that appeared in the New York Times that sparked off this, and it was further sparked off by an online article that quoted somebody by the name of Ed. This name is difficult to pronounce.
This is
Brzyytwa. Bzaitwa. Okay. Now,
is there any vowel in that name?
No.
B-R...
at the end.
At the end.
Bzaitwa, yes. The story is about, actually, this big chemical manufacturer consortium seeking to lobby the U.S. government and in turn lobby the Kenyan government about this business proposal that they have. It's at the lobbying stage.
Yeah.
Our Minister for Trade has said, this discussion hasn't actually reached the negotiation table, and should it do so, we will look at it advised by the laws we have.
Yeah.
Now, the ban that Kenyan had was not just about the use, but it was about also manufacturing and import. So as things stand, we can't import. As things stand, according to our laws. You cannot even import.
Yep.
So it would mean for what is at the center of this discussion to take place, a repealing of that law. Now, these are the sort of matters that eventually find their way into Parliament, because that's where you can repeal a law.
And Kenya has also entered into a global agreement that we are signatory to.
Of this consortium?
This global agreement.
Yes,
we are now we are actually taking steps against use of or importing of plastic waste.
But also, in the not too distant background, there's the discussion about this bilateral trade, the free trade discussion that Kenya is having with the US. Remember, Africa has been trying as a continent to have their own free trade area as a continent. And there's a little noise that this trade agreement that Kenya was trying to have with the US would actually interfere with what was ongoing or the discussions that were already going on within the continent. You know, America already has such an agreement with South Africa, just so that we have an understanding of what's going on here.
Yep.
And South Africa actually is in Africa. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes. But of significance is this. All these things are at a discussion phase. And why I think the alarm bells are right to sound now is because it's at the discussion phase where things go wrong.
Yes, it is.
This is where now the lobbies, of course, and that's what they do. This lobby, which represent the big petrochemical companies in the US, have found their way into the government. They've gone into the US Trade Office, and they have asked that this be included.
Yes.
Right, so that they are allowed. American companies will also be allowed to trade and bring in, petrochemical and plastics into the country, and there'll be no restriction of that of any nature. No law in the country will bar them from participating in this. I mean, this is at that stage, but the alarm bells are rightfully going off. Let's bring in some experts in this conversation so we can understand more from them. The first one is Griffin Ochieng. He's the Executive Director of the Center for Environment, Justice and Development. And the second person is James Waikibia, who's an environment activist with the Center for Environment, Justice and Development. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Griffins, even this article by the New York Times also quotes you. Just give us a brief background to what the beef is.
Come again, what there?
What the issue is. What is this that is raising the alarm bells again? Just to paint it to us directly, what the issue is.
Thank you very much. Yes. Arising from this exposure that came with regard to the lobbying that you just mentioned of the American Chemistry Council to the U.S. Congress and the negotiators, to lobby Kenya, the main issue was what was contained in that letter, particularly the issue to lobby for, export of plastic waste and other chemicals to Kenya, and not only Kenya, as a gateway to Africa. So considering the strong laws or the stand that we've taken on issues of plastic and the impact that has had on our environment, every Kenyan can relate to the challenges we've had with plastics. And we are already making a very good advance, move towards eradicating on single-use plastics. We started with the polythene bags and now protected areas where now we banned all this PET. So this was really strange in terms of why circumvent and the laws that are there, not only Kenyan laws but also international law like Basel Convention and the Bamako Convention. Kenya is a party to Basel, even though we have not ratified the Bamako Convention, but which is also much stronger. It's an African treaty. And the trend that you see, because mainly if you look at when China banned its imports of plastic waste in 2018 and even went further in early 2019 to make it stronger, we see a trend where, the main exporters, particularly in the US and other countries, are now trying to shift their trend to target other continents. They went to the Asia Pacific. There's been a lot of noise there. And now we are seeing that through this negotiation trade agreement that Kenya is doing with the US bilaterally, they saw an opportunity to try and get into Kenya and Africa. So this is really the reason why we had to raise this issue and raise the alarm bells. And so then we remind our policymakers of the need to continue to protect our environment from plastic waste and the dumping, so to speak, that will come not only as waste, but also other toxic additives and other toxic chemicals, mainly as other materials, that will come. And considering our infrastructure or other, capacity to manage this, it's really problematic to allow such a kind of, export into Kenya and in Africa in general. We are making Africa is coming up, rising to protect its territories from hazardous material, and that's why we had the Bamako Convention, which was agreed upon as African nation, because basically it wasn't we felt as Africa that the Basel was not strong enough, considering we saw the dumping of other toxic materials that happened in other countries like Ivory Coast and the rest. So these are the reasons why the main issue is because of the dumping, so to speak. Have
we seen cases of this specifically in Kenya before, Griffins, and also James, with your experience? Have we seen cases of this kind of dumping with kind of degradation on the environment, specifically in Kenya previously? Maybe we can start with James.
Okay. Personally, I have not seen that kind of dumping, but it does not come openly. You may not, see a container with plastic waste coming, because it's always almost all the time hidden. So possibly that is the reason that we have not seen such waste coming. But we have seen other countries like Asian countries, Philippines, Malaysia, where they have seen a lot of trash from America and Western countries getting into their countries.
What would be the point to take to mitigate all of this, Griffins, and to say that essentially we're not going to allow it because you see what's coming and there's something that you can do? What would be those things that can be done at this point to then refuse that this takes place?
Oh, yeah. I think for now, because as you even mentioned in your introductory discussion, this is still at discussion phase. And at this point, we have to be strong as a country to, stop any advancement around importation of plastic waste, and even go strong to ensure that as a country we go ahead and ratify, for example, the Bamako Convention, which is much strong in terms of expanded, which controls even products, as opposed to other treaties like Basel, which talks about hazardous materials. So even the lobbies are very smart in terms of the loopholes that exist. So this is why we have to ensure that we comply, and I would urge that we comply and ratify the Bamako Convention that is part of our African treaty. And for now, because it's a negotiation, we have to continue to be strong as a country, and I think there is need for coordination among the ministries. The Ministry of Environment is the focal ministry for this treaty. And when it comes to protecting our environment and eradicating single-use plastic in the long term, as we have already started with the ban of polythene bags, there is need to look into this negotiation, what's going on, and basically just say no to aspect of what will help up bringing a lot of plastic waste into the country, importing. We talked about our law which prohibited imports. Yeah, so then when it comes to imports, and we are here talking about plastic waste, we have to add products. We have to stay strong and comply and implement our laws, so that we are a net importing country. In the end, we have to ensure that in that import we stop hazardous materials, or those that will ending up being hazardous or problematic in terms of managing, because of our capacity as a country. We have challenges of waste management. We have challenges of, recycling, which is really bringing, the problem, how we are going to, for example, if this triples in terms of plastic waste doubles, for example, there is going to be a problem of managing that. So then we just have to prevent. The main issue is precautionary principle
and vigilance.
And vigilance.
Thank you very much. So let's take a break. We're speaking with the Griffins Ocheng and James Waikiba. They are both working with they are both environmental activists with the Center for Environment, Justice and Development, talking about some move that's being made by big companies in the U.S. to have one of these trade negotiations that we are having between the U.S. and Kenya allow bringing of plastic waste into the country. 28 minutes after 8. Let's take a break on Spice FM and KTN Home. We'll be back shortly. We want to take a look at the weather and traffic on Spice FM.
Okay, so let's look. We still see slightly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning, and highs of 26. It's going to get quite warm later if it does, and there's a chance of a sprinkle later, but we're just going to have to wait and see that out. In Nakuru, partly cloudy conditions at 15, and in Eldoret this morning, partly cloudy conditions at 15, going to a high of 20 today. In Kisumu, it is partly cloudy conditions at 21, warming up every now and then. It's likely to be a wet afternoon today. Kakamega, sunny conditions at 18, going to a high of 26 today. In Mombasa, where there was a sprinkle earlier on, now partly cloudy conditions at 24 degrees. Malindi is welcoming the rain later, currently at 23 degrees and partly cloudy conditions. Stepping out into Kampala, 24 degrees and partly cloudy. Dar es Salaam warming up just slightly to 26 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, and the fog is still quite low in Dar es Salaam this morning. At 10 degrees, it's cooled down just a bit in Joburg. We'll see sunny conditions rising to a high of 17 and coming down to lows of 4. And it's overcast in Lagos, welcoming the rain, taking it to a high of 27 today and lows of 18. Okay, so how has it changed? What does it look like in your neck of the woods at this point? It continues on Mombasa Road, where just around the inland container depot, there seems to be a bit of some traffic. People have used the back route to come out and then ride around General Motors, but it shouldn't be too bad. You should be able to get out without too much of an issue. Coming off of Thika Road as well, it looks good. The construction that we see happening in different parts of the city is going to continue. The footbridge on Bagathi Way, the expressway on Mombasa Road into the city centre, and then all through Westlands. It's going to be like this for some time, guys. So just be aware. Thika Road also coming into the CBD, not too bad either. The Eastern Bypass still giving up those vibes this morning, where there's so much traffic that we don't know what to do at this point, but sit still. The GSU roundabout is still an absolute mess. There was an accident, but now this is all the remnants from that. And it's going to take a while to get out of it. Okay? Okay. Let us know what you see. Spice FM KE. That's how you can talk to us on Twitter. Keep us company at least while you sit through the traffic.
And we're back, 28 minutes to 9. The conversation continues right here on Spice FM and KTN Home, 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Njeri 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. On the line with us this morning is James Waikibia and Griffin Zocheng from the Center for Environment, Justice and Development. So the big companies, not pharmaceutical, but petrochemical companies in the USA are lobbying that the US government inserts a clause in the trade negotiations between Kenya and the US that would allow American companies to export plastic waste into the country. Gentlemen, when we talk about plastic waste, I think it's important that we clarify and also expound what exactly qualifies as plastic waste. Griffins.
Thank you very much for the question. So we have different types of plastics, and there are those single-use plastics that are the recycling rate is low. So you end up having quite a number of them ending up in the environment as waste. You will not recycle it. The recyclability is low, and they are not from design made to be recyclable for use in other, or recovered for use in other products. So they are just single use. and you throw it in the environment, then it ends up as waste. So this is what we categorize as plastic waste. And there are different types of plastics in terms of PET, polyethylene, and other high-density polyethylene, HDPE, among others. So that's what we say as plastic waste.
James, what potential harm does this have on the environment so that we can really understand when we say banning on such? We're saying, non-invitation of companies who would essentially come and practice dumping, and be involved in dumping practices. What exactly effect does it have on the environment?
Oh, thank you very much. Plastic is generally bad for the environment because most of it is single use. As Griffiths said, it cannot be recycled, and worse, it cannot biodegrade naturally in the environment. And what happens is that once such plastic gets into the environment, it is beaten up by the sun. So what we call degrading or photodegrading, and breaks down into smaller plastics, which are even more dangerous, to the environment, to marine life, to wildlife, to everything else. So such kind of plastics, when they end up in the environment, in the rivers, are very harmful. And of course, you have heard there are reports saying that already humans have plastics in their bodies. So basically, that is the problem we are experiencing today. And you've also heard a report saying that by 2050, we may have more plastics in the ocean than fish. That is something we should be worried a lot about. 2050 is just a few years from now, basically 30 years. So it's a very big worry, it's a big concern that American government, is trying to twist Kenya into a trade agreement that will see us suffer and roll back all the gains we have made as a country. And I think that is something that every Kenyan should stand up against.
But is it the U.S. government or is it a lobby group that represents the world's largest chemical manufacturers?
Of course, it's a lobby group that, but the people who will be, getting into this trade agreement is between Kenya government and American government. So it is American government for its own interest, the interest of its manufacturers. So it will talk to the Kenyan government to see that happens. So basically, it's between the Kenya government and the U.S. government.
Yes, but to blame the U.S. government as though they're the ones who have initiated that particular discussion, as I understand it, has the U.S. government even accepted that petition and have they brought it to the discussion table? Those are things still in talk. But as you know, American government has previously, Donald Trump does not believe in climate change, He did not sign the Basel Convention Treaty. So that can tell you, that America will definitely sign into such agreements and accept them quickly for its own interest. Donald Trump's views, I doubt very much. I doubt if his views actually represent the views of all Americans. It may represent some. It certainly represents his. But I understand the ringing of the alarm bells. I understand it and I agree with you. We do not want this discussion to get to a point where the U.S. government is bringing it to our table. That I understand. But as a country, have we actually successfully managed our use of plastics?
I would say we have not, but we are showing some good improvement with the ban on plastic bags in 2017 and later the ban on single-use plastics in protected areas. We are showing good improvement. We are moving in the right path. And we are also an example to many countries all over the world, because most countries are trying to see how they can reduce their plastic waste, but they are not able because of pressure from such manufacturers in the U.S. and other powerful countries. So Kenya is really trying hard. We may be a very small economic country, but we are also very powerful on conservation, and bringing such laws on banning plastics. Many countries are worried because of the interest or the power that it has. It is bringing with other, these international companies.
Let me ask a different question. Do our laws, does our constitution have a sufficient backbone to actually fight against this apparent threat?
Section 42 of our Constitution, gives us a right to a clean and healthy environment. Basically, it talks blankly like that. But it is that, section of the Constitution that we should stand on and protect, because we know these plastics are going to harm the environment. And if they harm the environment, it is us who will suffer. When we destroy the environment, it is not the environment that suffers, it is the people and everything else in that environment.
So is there...
Let me bring out...
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Let me just add on to that. As Wakibia says, Section 42, with regard to right to clean and healthy environment, that's quite supreme in terms of, because the Constitution is a supreme law. And if I tell you how that right will be impeded by this kind of efforts, is that we've seen as an organization, and I'm part of an international network which is called IPEN. We've done studies that show that the main practice for managing waste, which when this ends up in the environment, is open burning and other forms like incineration. What happens is that when that happens, and as we see in our backyards, in our near homes, they release toxic chemicals, which are called persistent organic pollutants. And we've done studies, for example, in Ghana as IPEN, and also in Indonesia, we've seen whereby egg samples from free-range chicken, those are that near dump sites. When you test that, because eggs are what we call the carrier for in terms of testing in terms of the food chain, which have elevated levels of POPs, and this is a route to which we as humans, we eat eggs. We get exposed to this type of chemicals, which are very much toxic and are known to cause different diseases like cancer and others. So in this respect, you can imagine how our right to clean and healthy environment, particularly healthy, will be impeded by such kind of efforts to, roll back efforts that we've done. And as James Okibia said, we are a conservation country. We take lead in many of these issues. And this is why the lobbyists will not rest easy to see that this effort that will have a ripple effect even in other African countries will go ahead in terms of diminishing their market rate and profit.
Does Kenya have what it needs at this point? Because if we're looking at the lobbying stage, like we said, that's where a lot of these things slip in. It's at the lobbying stage that somebody's able to convince. I mean, we've seen it happen across the world very, very many times, whereby at the lobbying stage, you slip something in, it becomes part of the permanent agreement. Do we have the wherewithal to make sure that in terms of information, the right things are being discussed, the right light is being shown on the real information? Is that the situation, or are we a little bit scared about what may happen if the blinders are on right now?
No, we are players in these international treaties. We are key negotiators. We have very good laws, I would say, if from our constitution, which is very much progressive. We have other national laws like MCA, the regulations that exist. We are going further to develop other regulations like chemicals and toxic substances regulations. All these will be able to back us. We just
but
have
the laws
right
notwithstanding, Griffins, I think what the question here is, the negotiations are going to be commencing soon. The U.S. Trade Office has already put together its negotiation document. Kenya has prepared its negotiation document. Do we have, for example, a consortium of lobbies for environmentalists like yourselves and others that are coming together to pour through these documents to see that everything that has been proposed and everything that's going to be discussed at the table is going to be for the benefit of Kenya?
I would say yes, we are, and like I say, this negotiation is done by people. We have representatives from different organizations. What I'm not very, and worried about if there's a coordinated approach, whereby, because all these are multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary, so to speak. It requires a multi-stakeholder approach, whereby we have different ministries and different entities like civil society organization having representatives in such a kind of negotiating table. So if we have that, and it's not just led by one entity like the Ministry of Trade, for example, which perhaps will not look at it from the existing environmental laws or the passion for environment protection, then there may be challenges. But if that is, if it's a multi-stakeholder approach, there will be the opportunity to ensure that we remind and ensure that we comply with our laws and international, and more importantly, protection of our people and the environment.
But Griffins, you're saying if we have this, if we don't have this, these wheels are already turning. Is the civil society and other stakeholders involved in looking at this document? Have you, for example, as the Center for Environment, Justice and Development, reached out to other civil society organizations and said, let's all sit together, let's look at this, so that then we can present a combined response to the lead ministry and say, these are the areas that could be of a potential harm to us?
Yes, we are working at, actually there is already a petition that is being circulated by Greenpeace Africa and other public interest organizations, but that's the approach that we are going to have.
And to add
go
on,
ahead,
as Griffin has said, and to add on, as Griffin has said, I think it's not just about even civil society coming together, but also we need a lot of public outcry. You need people pressure, to pressure the government not to accept into such agreements, because these agreements are done very secretly. And then they come when just a few days to be released, and we may not have the time to discuss all that, but public pressure is very important in such a time.
Completely agree with you, and that's where your role comes in, because the civil society will be able to rally the public and create awareness to the public. The public may not be able even to have access to these documents. They may not be able to have the technical understanding of what's contained in these documents. But, for example, you are environmental and justice activists. You understand these things. So if you look at them and then you come to the public and say, look, guys, let's raise pressure, it's going to happen.
Yeah, if we came up together, the civil society members were able to look at these documents, break them down to, something that the normal Mwananchi will be able to understand and be able to release it all over. And there, many people will now be able to understand what we are talking about and support it. But if we are just, civil society sitting in boardrooms, this may not even work, and this trade agreement may go through, so quickly. But with pressure from over 10 million, 20 million Kenyans, they will feel, overpowered.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Griffins.
And I would add that it's this organizing that not only from national but also international, that's what has brought this to the fore, if I may tell you. Because this, through our public and civil society networks across the globe, we've been able to get this kind of process, which was going behind the scenes. And now, it's us, and we are, as I said, as James Okidia said, is rallying the public at national level here in Kenya to ensure that this negotiation does not water down efforts we have made to advance as a country to protect ourselves from single-use plastic and other plastic waste.
Griffins, you talked about the study that you've conducted, which shows how we are dealing with this single-use plastics, saying a lot of this is incinerated or just burned on open fires and other kind of things, and dumping them in the rivers that end up in the oceans. Is there sufficient investment in the country for dealing with recycling of plastics?
I would say no. There is no sufficient investment or infrastructure on that. The recycling is still very low. And in that regard, I would say that this advancement that we put up adequate infrastructure, if you are recycling, let's say, 10%, and you are putting it to the environment 3 times, how are you going to cope with that kind of, to get rid of what is already in the environment? So my answer is that those efforts on recycling are going on, but they are not too much in terms of the tripling of what is going on or coming into the environment in terms of the waste.
Do you think it should be mandatory in terms of a policy that is put out by government? Do you think it should be mandatory? Because we look at some countries, I'm sure you're well aware of some countries, in Europe, for example, that you take out your trash and it's basically selected by you in your home before it comes and it's collected by the public. Do you think at this point it should be mandatory? Things like recycling in this country, things like the separation of rubbish. In some cases, it's difficult to even collect the rubbish in the first place. But do you think that such things need to be put into national policy so that at that very level it's being protected?
Yes, and I would just go further and say there is a concept what we call zero waste. The concept of zero waste has different approaches, whereby the source separation, as you put it, is part and parcel of any country or city effort to manage its waste. We have other aspects of design of the materials that are coming in, or rather that are in the manufacturing stage. These are designed not to end up as single use, but for recycling. And other efforts of zero waste. So I would say that need to be mainstreamed in our national laws. And as an organization, we are doing various projects across the coast of Kenya that demonstrate or pilot zero waste. I'm currently in South Coast and looking at one of the sites where we're having a project to demonstrate zero waste as part of, ensuring that we have zero waste. And this is mainstreamed in the national laws. This is what has to be made mandatory, a concept of zero waste in our county laws and other national laws, so that we can be able to prevent much of this that ends up in the environment just promoting the end of pipe kind of solutions whereby you want to just say that we want to incinerate, we just want to, manage the waste through recycling. That's not the approach. It needs to be holistic in terms of looking at it from different angles.
Some may say that in terms of the priority ladder, that it's not one of the highest rungs in Kenya, and that there are other things that need to be taken care of before you even start looking at things like national policy for recycling and zero waste. And there's so many things that need the national purse attention. What would you have to say about that? I mean, for both of you, and saying that, is it really a money issue, or is it in terms of an import issue? It is necessary to do this at this point to save the environment, vis-a-vis concentrating on things that require national funds to get people out of poverty, for example, infrastructure, develop the country. Where does this fall in all of this?
Even as we talk about infrastructure development and bringing up more recycling facilities, sorting of waste from source and all that, we have to understand that what we are talking about, the single-use plastic, it cannot be recycled most of the time. So even if we improved on the infrastructure for recycling, such plastics will always end up in the environment. Even in the United States of America, it is not able to recycle most of its waste. That is why it sends it away to poorer countries like Far East countries and to Africa to recycle it, because it cannot itself manage it. It cannot itself recycle that plastic. So even as we think about improving the infrastructure for recycling and all that, we have to understand that most of this plastic, this single-use plastic, is an evil that must be done away with. That is why I continue to say that most of these plastics should be phased out, should be banned. The likes of straws.
Is there an existence of a viable option to these plastics that we refer to as being evil? Something that will have the same functionality, the same purpose, but doesn't have the harm and the dangers that these single-use plastics clearly present?
Yes, I think there is. And, it's a matter of design.
What are these alternatives?
We have paper, biodegradable paper. We have sisal. We have the number is there's so many. But the industry has brainwashed us into thinking that only plastic is the only option. But once we remove the blind from our eyes, we're able to see the alternatives are many. But the chemical industry, the plastic industry, because it has a lot of, oil, and the oil has no business right now because the transport industry is not consuming enough and their profits are plummeting. Now they are thinking of adding more plastics because so that they can make as much profit as before. And they'll do that by introducing more single-use plastics, because more single-use plastics as they say, will help the poor, but essentially it's not helping the poor.
I want to thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking to us, and we want to urge you to please maintain your watchdog role. Keep looking out for these things and highlighting them. You certainly have a platform here on Spice FM where you can come in and we raise this to the public as well, and asking that the authorities take a cleaner look at and a closer look at what is happening. James Waikibia is an environmental activist with the Center for Environment, Justice and Development, whose executive director is Griffin Zucheng. Both the gentlemen have been talking to us this morning. Asanteni sana and have a great day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and the conversations continue right here on Spice FM, and we want to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us since 7 o'clock. Now coming up to 5 minutes to 9. The conversation, however, continues on Spice. If you want to tune into Spice FM 94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7. If you're in Njeri, it's 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. And also the show is live streaming on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter, Spice FM KE, as well as on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. To our audience on KTN Home, Kwaherini. See you tomorrow again at 7 o'clock on Spice FM. This conversation continues. The Situation Room broadcasts every weekday between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. All right, so 5 minutes to 9, and I think it's important, and it's important to commend, and it's commendable that these organizations have been able to pick out some of these things. Powerful lobby, and of course the powerful lobby is doing what a powerful lobby does. It's looking at the interests of its members, and these members are the large petrochemical companies. They want to find a market for their waste. They also want to find a market for their other products that they come up with. And if Africa is going to be the biggest market for this plastic waste in the next couple of years, that it's, the companies are going to look at how do we secure that market.
It's true. I think there's absolute necessity at this point to stay proverbially woke in terms of what's really going on.
Yep.
It could sound like an investment opportunity for any country whereby you hear a big petrochemical firm wants to come in and set up shop here, without looking at the underlying elements that come as a result of that agreement. And could be that the setting up of said company is a smokescreen for the dumping that has happened in other parts of the world. So I think it's absolutely necessary, government and those who work in the sector, to actually come together and say, you know what, this is what has been the practice in the past. It's very much a possibility that they're coming here to do the same thing here. So are we tuned to what is really going on here in Kenya? Are we tuned to other countries who may take a couple of millions of dollars on one hand, but then you sacrifice your country in terms of its environment on the other? So really what is happening when these things are taking place? It's coming to the conversation table with the blinders off and be really sure about what's going on to essentially save your country and your people.
And it calls on the Ministry of Trade to actually approach a multi-sectoral approach on this. Invite more stakeholders to the table and say, guys, we are about to get into this negotiation table with a U.S. trade representative, and this is what they have proposed, and this is what we would like to propose. What do you think? Talk to KEPSA, talk to the manufacturers, and then bring in the other civil society organizations that will look at other aspects. So these guys are looking at the environmental aspect. Others would look at the other aspects, the human rights aspect when it comes to labor and labor laws, when it comes to the issues of trade and how it flows around the region. All those people need to be brought together at a table, and so that Kenya as one unit negotiates this deal. with America.
Decision, for sure.
For the benefit of all of us. And this can also now be replicated when it comes to also coming into the AFCTA, the African
Free trade
agreement as well. Same. And going forward as well with the trade agreement that we're about to sign with the EU, the trade agreements with the UK, how involved are all of us in that? You have raised this many times before. It always goes into the detail. What did we sign?
Yep.
That's where the problems actually begin.
Yep. If what we signed, we were not really careful and looking at what exactly we were getting ourselves into, then we end up with the shorter end of the stick, just because we were not careful.
Sometimes there's no stick.
Yeah. We just had an illusion.
You just end
Thought
up,
you were holding a stick,
you end,
and then the mirror is removed.
You end up with space.
Well, keep it right here. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Broadcasting in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, and worldwide, and www.spicefm.co.ke. So in the next hour, we shift gears a little bit and have more conversations. It's coming up to 9 o'clock in the Situation Room. Listen every morning is CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Eric Latiff.
Okay, so what are we looking at now? Mombasa Road still a little bit clogged up, and that's just outside of the Cabanas area and then heading towards General Motors. But you'll find after that, we don't have many more incidences of crazy traffic this morning. Coming off of Thika Road was not too much of a spectator sport today. It was looking much better than we saw it yesterday, though. We're getting into the middle of the week, so it's looking a lot better now. We still have the issue on the Eastern Bypass this morning, and traffic is going to be crazy as we move forward. And we know that it's still there because of what happened earlier, but hopefully that we'll be able to get out of that without too much of a scar, guys. Looking at Jogo Road specifically, there was an issue earlier on. Some clogged up traffic as you get to the City Stadium roundabout, but thereafter you should be fine. Spice FMKE will look at traffic in about half an hour or so and see what it looks like then moving forward. But for now, you should be fine.
Two minutes after 9. Welcome to the show. CT, remind us the proverb, tafadhali.
Okay, the proverb tafadhali. Without fools, there would be no wisdom.
Is that so?
It is so.
So where is this from?
This is referred to as a traditional African saying. Yes. You know, there are things that, when I say African, I mean precisely that. There are very many parts of this continent where people will have similar sayings. And what perhaps catches one's attention is not the wisdom part of this sentence, or this saying, but the fool. Because to most ears, it rings like an insult.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in many cases, it's actually meant as a description, not an insult.
Mm-hmm.
It points to something that people might ordinarily not want to look into closely. You know that thing we were referring to yesterday, which chases you from villages? Yes.
What was it called? Coco. Was that it?
No, we're talking about the truth and the consequences of it.
It can be cocoa.
Yes.
This would be it.
This would be it. If you're in a situation where you should have learned from the circumstances or the outcomes of some activities, and you do not, or you repeat the same activities and get the same consequences, and which are not in your interest, then you might be referred to as foolish. So your actions and the consequences that follow are an indication of your foolishness, because had you been wiser, you wouldn't have taken those steps as repeatedly as you have, and to end up in the same situation that you've ended up in before. So, the way I understand it is, when you look at sayings or when you look at proverbs, the purpose, among other things, is to teach. And the process of teaching involves opening your eyes, not physically, opening your mind's eye so that you can actually comprehend to a greater depth things that may patently be obvious, but which in reality are not, especially if you take into account the ramifications of those decisions.
True.
Yes.
Okay, today is Tuesday. It's the first day of September 2020. Now that last week we were looking at the historic day when we promulgated the new constitution 10 years ago. Today we look at 3 years ago. On this day in 2017, the Supreme Court of Kenya nullified the presidential election and said that the country needed to go back to the ballot. And of course, you know what the Supreme Court gave as the reason. They said there were a bit of irregularities that were noted in the process of the election, the way the IEBC conducted, especially the announcement of the results, and that was a blot to the entire process. And that was enough to nullify. So looking at this 3 years later, is this a day that we look at and say, okay, so we made history. And this is what the CJ, David Maraga, said on the day. The greatness of any nation lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and adherence to the rule of law, and above all, respect to God. This is what he said on the day. Now, looking back 3 years later, looking back at the tension that was there on that day, looking back at the statements that were made, the president saying, all right, so I've heard what the Supreme Court judges have said. I will obey what the court says, although I completely disagree with what their ruling is, but it's okay. Seeing the opposition coalition saying, all right, so this has basically pointed fingers at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and therefore the management of the IEBC needs to be changed before we go into a new round of elections, going onto the streets demanding Chebukati must go, Chiloba must go, getting into another election, second round of voting in which the main opposition candidate did not participate, but the others participated. Let's look back. Did it change anything in us? Did it add into our democratic process?
Did it bring the desired effects to
Effect.
those who had agitated for it and actually got it?
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now, the wisdom of hindsight, can we actually document these achievements and say this is what was achieved?
This is what was achieved.
And as a result of this, we are in a far better place. Or conversely, we are not.
There are many who would argue that what happened was what was agitated for, that was it. An overturn of the decision, and that was it. In terms of a lasting change when it came to the politics or how things are actually done, or the fear that a decision that you take at the point of voting is not actually what is upheld when it comes to the country's national politics. Has anything really changed since then? And I think there's some who are on the point of saying, you know what, even though that decision was made, nothing changed thereafter. You still have decisions that are being made, whether it is at political party level, whether it is at parliament level, whether it is at Senate level. Decisions are still going to be made regardless. What happened at that point was the reality that such a thing could happen. And there it ended. That, oh, okay, something like that can actually happen, whereas Supreme Court overturns an election decision. And we've actually seen that replicated in other countries thereafter. Malawi being one example of what had happened because of that. First time ever. And then it being copied. But many would say, well, that's just about the size of it.
That we set an example to
But
the
an
others.
example was set, but then in terms of how politics happened thereafter, nothing.
No, I think that already is a big win. You know, the fact that you could have a Supreme Court that, you know, the history of this country, and then getting to a point where you have a Supreme Court that can sit and decide by majority, because it was not unanimous, by majority, that this is our verdict.
Sure,
and
but
our
in
verdict
that-
is understanding the, you know, just 10 years earlier, we had gone into a situation of almost civil war.
Sure.
10 years later, Supreme Court can say, no, go back to the vote. Go back to the ballot. I think that, to me, that is a big win.
Sure. In that specific election, when now everybody was asked to go back to the vote, and you still had the one side who said, you know what, we're actually not going to participate. Was that not what they said? We are not going to participate.
Yep.
And the reasons as to why they gave for not participating is because nothing had really changed.
That's what they said.
Yes.
That's what they said.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said. It's one side who said that nothing had really changed. Even
And
with
this
the-
nothing, what did it comprise
Even
of?
with the overturning of it, they spoke specifically to the powers that be within the Electoral Commission. That if it is the same Electoral Commission that is going to handle an election which brought us to this point in the first place, that they would not participate. Because on their point, nothing really had changed. If there was an overturning of the result and saying that actually it was null and void, and then you still use the same Electoral Commission that put us in this place in the first place, what exactly are you doing? And this was the bone of contention that they had at that point.
Talking of change and exporting the change, what happened in Malawi when a similar complaint was put forth? Was there change? Did they not also complain about their equivalent of an electoral commission? They did. And what happened?
Was there a change
Yes, there was.
in the Electoral Commission?
Yes, there
The
was.
chair of the Electoral Commission resigned.
Yes, he did.
Voluntarily.
Yes,
and
he did.
a new team went and conducted the election.
Yes.
But also, on the other hand, if you look at the argument that was put forth, especially by the NASA coalition, that they wanted a change in the Electoral Commission, and the demand for it, you know, I don't want to really go into the merits and the demerits of the demand for a change of the IEBC at that point. I want to look at what is it that the Supreme Court found. They found that the way the IEBC had transmitted the results, that's where the main issue was. Not in the registration of voters, not in the registration and the gazettement of the polling centers, not in the conduct of the voting itself. It's not in the counting, but in the transmission of the results. And that's where the issue was. Now, did we see a change in the transmission of results in the subsequent election? Did we see a change in the IEBC itself getting to a point where they have since then improved their system so much that we can clearly say that in the next election, if an election ought to be called today, the transmission of the election that is going to be held today is going to be very different from how the election results were being transmitted after the 8th of August election, 2017. Have we seen that kind of change in the institution?
By change, do we mean that have we seen change at the helm? Have we seen change in the structure?
It's in the system for me. My question is basically looking at what is, forget the other, you know, maua around
The
it.
drama that
The
accompanied all
issue
this.
that the Supreme Court raised was in the transmission of the results. The issue that had been canvassed before court was in the transmission of the results, the openness of it, open the servers. Let's see. How come a result is announced here and the form that has been scanned and the one that arrives and the one that's on the ground are different? That whole issue. Has that system been cleaned out? It doesn't matter who's at the helm. Because it doesn't matter if today, we had removed Isaac Hassan a couple of years earlier. We brought in Chebukati. We clearly, for sure, Chebukati is not going to be the one that's running the 2022 election. The conversation has already started. We're going to have a new head at the helm of the IEBC in 2022. Is the transmission of the election going to be different? And should that not be what we are focusing on? and not the personality and the individual who's really heading this election body.
You know why we can't run away from the personality? Is integrity. See, a system's integrity is actually determined by those who run it. System is just a system. You program it rather, and it does what you want it to do. But if we are certain, or we are near certain, that the individuals at the helm can be relied on to actually look into the interest of the people of this country and to do what they're supposed to do, as they should or as they ought, then yes. But the truth of the matter is this. That system, even that we speak of, the equipment is never really that faulty.
Not the problem.
No, that's not where the issue is. The system is equipment plus those who are there to ensure that it functions as it should.
It's the processes that have been put in place.
Yes.
At what point, for example, is the scanning of the results going to be? At what point is the result going to be seen on the other end? At what what point is a physical copy going to be?
And Eric, is the commission independent?
That's the point. When it comes to individuals, that's why I always tell you, for me, the person at the helm of the IEBC is not really the issue. The issue is whether we have ensured that IEBC is independent. Because Kivoito was vilified.
Wasn't he just?
Or completely. Almost hanged at the stakes at Uhuru Park. Went home, man died. So Isaac Hassan runs the referendum in 2010. Isaac Hassan is an angel. Isaac Hassan runs the election in 2013. Isaac Hassan is the devil. Get Isaac Hassan out. Go. Plus his entire commission out. Chebukati, the entire political fraternity is involved in the selection of Chebukati.
Yes, they are.
They are in agreement that they have found the best team.
Yes.
That team runs the election a couple of years down the road, becomes the devil. Surely, those people cannot just stand from angel to devil just like that. The problem lies elsewhere. And that's why I'm raising the issue. If it was the system that had been put in place, if it was just not just the technology, but the technology plus the processes, plus the people managing it, plus ensuring that there's transparency to the whole system, if we have not addressed those things, 2017 was just, It was inconsequential. It was just
so you're saying
failure.
Even the overturning, are you saying then essentially that the overturning of this decision then was, a big win, but in terms of the operations of things moving forward, in terms of elections,
the lessons learned,
then
actually,
it's a splash in the pan. It didn't really make a difference.
Eric does have a point. Remember, one of the complaints that we heard very loud and clear involved the preparation for the election. Everything was being done last minute. And they were asking, but we knew when the elections were coming. Why didn't you start this process earlier?
Yeah.
Why are we having this rushed affair where last minute and there's this debate of should we get this here? Should we get this here? Should we? And it looks like we may be headed in that same direction, even as we speak now.
Yeah. We have an independent constitutional commission that is full-time, all right? This commission is not cobbled up 16 months to an election.
No, it's there all the time.
It is there throughout. We have not started having the conversation about how they are preparing for the 2022. They know there's going to be a general election in August 2022. Since 10 years ago, it has been very clear to the IEBC, the B part of the IEBC, that in this year 2020, they're supposed to be relooking and reviewing boundaries.
Have you had that conversation?
And here we are.
And the looking into the boundaries is actually a very, very important, it's a key function in determining these electoral processes. Because within those 5-year cycles, the population around the country does not remain stagnant. It changes. And our political boundaries are very much determined by the population that are represented in those areas. Yes. Now, if you have no, and by the way, changing boundaries, this is not an exercise you're going to do in a year. It doesn't work like that.
No.
It involves going around the country to all these constituencies, talking to people, having a conversation, understanding what they want. It's, the sort of conversations that we were informed about at great length, like the BBI. That's the sort of conversations that you have.
Yep.
And it takes time.
In every electoral area, which means that you're starting from the ward.
Yes.
Because you've got to review. is this ward still valid as a ward as it sits? Or does this ward need to be merged with another one? Do we need to expound the boundaries? That conversation needs to happen at that level, at the ward level, going to the constituency level, to the county level. Surely.
And the locals will have their say, because they will
course.
tell you, after all, they'll tell you, actually, this is what we need, this is what we'd like. You know, there used to be a constituency in the Nyando area called Winam. It disappeared. And how did it disappear? It disappeared out of such a discussion. When the then commission, the equivalent of this IEBC, went around determining, looking at the boundaries, the population, the moment the boundaries shifted, disappeared.
Off the window.
Yes. Some are merged, some are separate. And by the way, it's throughout the country.
Yep.
It's not in one place. You suddenly find that it was one constituency rather. Now it's two. Sometimes it was one constituency, it's been merged with another one. That's what they do. And this is not an exercise you want to start a year before an election. It'll cause so much mayhem because people will read mischief into it.
Everywhere.
What prevented them from starting it last year?
What did prevent them from starting last year?
They had already started a conversation and saying, now we are preparing because next year we're going to have the review. Now, of course, they'll come up with the excuse that, there was COVID this year.
They'll even tell you, and then there was a census.
Yeah. No, census is what they were waiting for, so that they can have the conversation this year. So they'll tell you that, this year now, we could not go anywhere because, of course. But have you heard the IEBC even raising the conversation and saying, look, the Constitution already says there shall be 290 constituencies. So we are not expecting that we're going to have 270, 291, 288. No.
It's clear.
There'll still be 290. Now, it's the boundaries. What are those 290 constituencies? Now, that even makes it even more critical. Because in trying to maintain the same number of 290 and then also trying to look at the new issues that have emerged, population shifts, people coming in and saying, you know what, we're in the same constituency with these guys, but we don't like them.
So whichever way we choose to look at it, then there is an issue in this country with the intellectual... there is a problem then with the IEBC. Whether you want to cite it as one thing or another, whether you want to cite it as a body that brings in mischief here on one side, or you want to cite it as a body that's not actually fulfilling its mandate, whereby things like boundary allocation should be done, then having to do it at a later date, somebody's going to come in and cite mischief. So at the end of the day, not fulfilling its mandate as it should is going to have an effect on the way the country is run electorally. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. So is there a problem with the IEBC? Maybe what this has actually done is that when you look at all the factors or the elements of this decision and how it was overturned in 2017, is that it gave way to probably look at more issues than the transmission of results, for example.
Yep.
And to say that is there something inherently wrong with the way in which the IEBC operates its business? Without trying to get involved in the individualistic politics, the body as an entity on its own and the way it's run, there's a problem. And that has to be sorted. Because if it's not sorted, anything that goes wrong after that, any politician will be able to come in and point and say, you see, they're not doing their job. And if they can muddle this up, then they can also muddle up the transmission of results. And it will be blamed for everything.
It will.
It'll all go back to transmission of results. There's rigging. They're being used. There's a puppet master somewhere pulling the strings. But can you imagine what if it was? If your operations were seamless, as an electoral body, if your operations were seamless, it would be that much more difficult for anybody to point fingers and actually have some weight in their words.
When they say the way to hell is paved with good intentions, the intentions behind forming the IEBC were very noble. Just like the intentions for forming the National Land Commission were very noble.
Yeah.
But both unfortunately has left us, the citizens of Kenya, with a lot of mud in our face. The very things that we assumed they were going to help solve are the ones they actually helped
Make worse.
exacerbate. Yes.
Is it possible for us to professionalize IEBC?
Yes, we
and
can.
by professionalizing it, I mean removing it. Professional is not political. That's what I mean. It's not that it's right now the IEBC is full of quacks and all people who don't understand. No. What I mean is distance it from the politics. I know that we have raised this issue many times before, and every time you tell me it's a body that is managing a political process, so the political players need to have
They do.
a role in it.
Or they
And
will not allow anyone to exclude
and I
them from
keep
having a
saying,
role.
I think the day we are able to say the political players, just the same way the citizens sit back and they wait for the IEBC to tell us, it's the same way the political players should sit back and wait for IEBC to tell us. Have a completely independent electoral and boundaries commission, an electoral management body that is completely independent. It is removed. It does not take instructions from anyone. It does not listen to politicians. The selection of the people who sit in this body is not determined by political parties. It's absolutely separate.
Eric, there's one unit within the government that, irrespective of which government we've had, seems to have played that role. It's called the Office of the Auditor General. They have been giving the governments of the day bad news from time immemorial. The very thing the governments don't want to hear.
Yeah.
They will tell you. In fact, for the longest time, one felt, this is really the true opposition here. Because if opposition here means telling the government things which are true, but which they don't particularly want to hear. So I have to ask, how have Auditor Generals managed to do that? Because without fail, they all have. Some more than others, but they have. Simply saying, excuse me, this is what we found, and this is what it is. The Supreme Court, this is what we found, this is what it is, and it amounts to us going back to the ballot. Yes. IEBC.
This is what we found.
Have those servers been open since 2017?
Well,
Maybe it was open when I wasn't here.
or anybody else for that matter. Maybe it was opened when nobody else was present.
Was there really serious clamor for the opening of those servers? Or was it just adding to the drama?
Well, if they had been open, there would have been no drama.
Well, allow people to see what's inside. I mean, why is it clouded in so much mystery? If there's something that would help people then be able to ground their beliefs or deny other beliefs, then just show it to them and get it over with. What's the problem? By virtue of the fact that you continue, somebody's asking you and then you go round and round the rugged rock without actually telling anybody what's going on, you're just basically making them think that you have something to hide. Open it up, let people see what's there. And then if they go and they actually find that there is nothing that is supporting their position, then they keep quiet and they move on to something else. But by virtue of the fact that you're hiding it, that you're not showing them, is like you're pointing that you have something to hide.
No, and then you entrench it.
Yeah.
And then you cannot actually move their thinking process from that perspective.
There is nothing you will tell anybody today that was asking for the opening of those servers that will make them believe that there was nothing in there that would have helped their case. Nothing. 3 years later, tell them, actually, you know what, guys, there really was nothing here. Nothing. You will not be able to convince them otherwise. Especially since for 3 years you denied them vision or access to it. You didn't show them what they wanted until even in 2020, during a by-election in Kibera, people were still asking about the opening of those servers and saying that IEBC is up to its rotten tricks again. People are still hinged on that same thing. There's nothing you will say. And they will continue to connect that inaction to some kind of rot they perceive at the IEBC. They will.
This is what is really, truly, and truly interesting with our institutions. If you had such an institution or you're part of it, it's never win-win for you. So long as we have different parties vying for that same position of government, you will not. You make a decision that appears to favor one side, the other side will lynch you.
100%.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you are somebody who was actually put forth by this side.
It doesn't matter. You'll have been bought.
Yeah, you've been bought. You should remember who gave you this job. And you are voting, making decisions in favor of the other side.
Essentially, they are telling you that the reason why, and probably this is why you are making the assertion that you are making, Eric, because so long as there's a political process, there is the unspoken debt owed factor.
Yeah. Because of the nature of our politics. It's not... Electoral management bodies world over are actually participatory picked by the parties.
Yes, they are.
But because there's also the general understanding in the society that these people, when they go there, they shall be independent. And the reason why you've been picked by your party is just because they're looking at you and they're thinking, this person is not easy to be compromised. Cannot be compromised by us, cannot be compromised by the other side, so he's okay. We trust him. Let him go there. We at least know that there's one person who is level-headed. It's a general assumption.
Eric, you know, the level-headedness, I think I would have to add something to it. He's level-headed and will not be swayed from supporting our cause.
Yes. Oh, yes.
He can be relied on to understand the position he should take on these matters.
Cannot be bought.
Yes. Do you really and honestly think that when we make appointments, our political parties make appointments or suggestions for appointments, that the element of bias in their favor is not considered?
Of course it is considered.
I
The lobbying that happens before the political party fronts a name.
I would argue that the
Tells you.
independence that you speak of would work against you in such a case. If it is known that you truly have an independent mind, you are the last person they would want. Because you may not vote in their favor, or you may not favor their position because of your independent mindedness. You may actually decide there's an opportunity for you to actually air your views, and that's not what they want you to do.
that's not what they
No,
want.
that's
Or an
not what they want you to
opportunity
do.
for you to walk away and decide to do something on your own.
That is not what they want.
They
That's
don't
what
want
you're
that.
put there for.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a lot has changed, according to Sami Murage. A lot has changed recently. It has been brought to the daylight that the judicial system is not independent. One step ahead, 3 steps backwards. So we are asking, 3 years ago today, on the 1st of September 2017, Kenya's Supreme Court nullified the presidential election results as announced by the IEBC. What has changed since that historic moment? In your opinion, has there been any change since that historic moment? 0719-012-600. Please join this conversation. Also, you can tweet your response at Spice FM KE, or you can post it on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Spice FM KE, 9:30. Let's take a look at the weather and traffic.
It's 17 degrees in Nairobi. It's still partly cloudy here and there, but the sun is going to peek out, taking us to highs of 27 and lows, actually highs of 23 and lows of 11. In Njeri today, we'll go to highs of 23. It's partly cloudy in Njeri at 12. And in Nakuru, 13 degrees and partly cloudy, going to highs of 24 and lows of 11 with rain promised for later. Thunderstorms will be the order of the afternoon in Eldoret. Currently, mostly cloudy conditions at 13 degrees, going to a high then of 19. In Kisumu this morning, it's mostly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 18. And in Kakamega, it's partly cloudy at 16 degrees. It'll change later, though, taking rains through till tomorrow morning and into Thursday even. Highs of 24 today and lows of 14. Mombasa experiencing light rain showers again at 23 degrees. The rain is going to continue through most parts of today with highs of 28 and lows of 23. It's partly cloudy in Malindi at 24, going to highs of 28. Showers expected later in the day. And thunderstorms are forecasted for Kampala later, with highs of 25 and lows of 18. 31 will be the high in Dar es Salaam today, currently at 21 degrees and clear skies. Sunny conditions will last throughout most of today. Mostly cloudy conditions in Johannesburg this morning, and there's a chance of rain later with highs of 14 and lows of 7. In Lagos, Nigeria, it's clear at 25 degrees this morning, highs of 28 and lows of 23 with a chance of rain later in the day. Temperatures are lowering in the UK. London today at 8 degrees, highs of 20 and partly cloudy conditions. Clear skies in Paris at 12 degrees, taking us to highs of 21 and lows of 11. And we finish in New York, getting into Tuesday morning with showers at 24. That'll be the high today, coming down to lows of 21. It's looking much better, guys, wherever we choose to look at it. Coming off Mombasa Road and also getting into the CBD, we know that there will still be heightened levels of traffic right around the Huru Highway, and that'll take us through most of today. Otherwise, it looks good. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Mombasa Road is a bit cloggy, but you'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
So What has changed since 2017? I mean, what was it? What signified the big news of 2017, the 1st of September 2017? The reason that was given by the Supreme Court was a flaw in the process. And you're asking, I mean, if you look at the fact that Malawi, for example, just copied our example, and also the Supreme Court nullified our election. If you look at our own Supreme Court, it has remained unchanged since then. It's the same members that are sitting in the same Supreme Court. But the judiciary itself, you can say, you know, to some certain degree, the relationship between the judiciary and the executive has been soured. Is it because necessarily of the decision that they made on this day? Or is it because of very many other factors as well? Is it as bad as it's painted?
I actually think this thing we refer to as bad is good. I would fear to live in a country where the judiciary is on chummy-chummy terms with the executive.
Where they are all
Because we've
buddy,
actually
buddy.
we've seen what happens when they're on chummy-chummy, buddy-buddy terms with the executive in this country.
Yeah.
Yes. Essentially, they simply execute the will of the executive. When they appear to be at loggerheads, and I would argue the same if, say, the National Assembly or our Parliament seems also to be at loggerhead with one of the other arms of government, that is a good thing for our constitution and for our country. It means the check and balance role is actually being played.
It's being played, yes.
Yes.
That there's pushback because an issue has been raised that you don't like.
Yes,
Which is
precisely.
the role of that other organization that is raising the issue.
Yes.
To raise those issues. But I'm looking at the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution of our Supreme Court still remains the same. The issues about the individual judges, yes, there have been attempts here and there, attempts brought against Justice Njoki Ndongo, of course, the case against the Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, the back and forth between the National Executive headed by the President and the Chief Justice, David Maraga. But by and large, the Supreme Court is still intact as the Supreme Court. You know, there are those that are saying, wow, by 2020, this court will have been reconstituted. No, it hasn't happened. So which means to me it's a win. It's a win for the judiciary that they could make a decision like this that goes against, that really annoys the president, because you could clearly see on the day he was annoyed. But he said it's okay. Nothing has happened.
That particular arm of government, those officials who function within it have tenure, don't they?
Yep.
Precisely. Now, you are right. This is a perfect example of the Constitution actually working. In the absence of tenure, the discussion may have been a bit different, wouldn't it?
True. Although also the issues could have been brought against them. Oh, yes, Justice Jackton Ojwang, there was an issue against him. A commission formed. The commission said there's nothing wrong with Justice Ojwang. He's back in office.
He retired, I believe.
Oh, yeah, yes.
He did retire, didn't he? I think he reached retirement age. He ought to have retired.
No.
Or
Okay.
am I misunderstanding
I
this?
think there's well, let's just confirm that online. But yes, the issue is that Supreme Court that made that decision, by and large.
And then there was Justice Mwilu. And there were all these issues surrounding her conduct.
Case brought against her.
You know the problem with the understanding of issues in our country? The issues can never just stand on their own. That an accusation is just an accusation, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the decision you made earlier on. No, it has to be tied in with something political.
He actually did resign, or rather retire.
Retire.
Yes.
He retired and is now chairperson of the Aegean Petroleum Regulatory Authority. So then he did resign, or rather retire.
He retired.
from
He
the
reached
Supreme
retirement
Court.
age. Yes.
Retirement age, right.
Yes.
So,
The thing is, if you look at even our judges, the judges of the High Court of this country, and if we look at some of the judgments that they've arrived at, there are judgments that are seen as being government-friendly and some which are considered to be not government-friendly.
Yep.
And there's an accusation that for the longest time has rung within the corridors of the government, that the bottleneck in the fight against corruption has been the judiciary. And yet, when you look at what the judiciary is doing, you can't say that is actually that's not true.
It's not.
No, they seem to be doing their job quite well.
we spoke with a gentleman here from the commission, And one of the things that he did tell us was that it was clear at some point that there's a lot of work that's going on, but they also, as a lot of people have, really probably failed in their communication of the same. And because of the way things have been in the past, I think the direct assumption always is that judiciary is doing some kind of hand-holding exercise with the government, or that judiciary is constantly in bed with the government. And that is the perception in the minds of people. Oh, after all, the judges are just going to do what the government wants them to do. Whereby you find that it's possible that you will have decisions that are taken that go against the grain of what the government is doing. Not because they want to prove a point, but because as far as the extension of justice, the law overrides relationship. The law overrides expectation. The law is the law is the law. Far be it from the imaginations of people to actually think that judiciary is doing its job as opposed to being a puppet for the government.
But then comes in this discussion. Remember the issue of the 41 judges and magistrates, and the assent that was required of the president.
Yep.
Now, if you look at that and you look at some of the cases that we've had in our high courts, which have more or less tied the hands of the president. In short, there are certain things he may have wanted to do, but the judgment is such that if you're to follow the law, you can't. And then there are those who argue and say, but wait, the executive lead the charge when it comes to ignoring court orders. Now, all this is a debate, or all these are debates or discussions that are taking place within this country. And the common denominator is our judicial system.
Right.
Yes. So you actually have to argue, how can these discussions be taking place if indeed the judicial system is ineffective?
Yeah.
They could improve, yes, but it cannot be said that they're sitting back and not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Work is happening.
Yes.
They are actually working. Right. What else would you say was like the big win? What has changed since then?
You know, there's something that we discussed not very long ago, a couple of weeks ago. It is a self-induced survey that the judicial system has to determine performances and rewarding those who perform, and they have indicators.
Yeah.
The cases that people go through, there's always been the issue of backlogs, and yet the court in Meru showed that with all the issues that other people discuss, there was one particular judge who showed they actually clear their desk. The cases that are brought to them, they clear, and they even start going into backlogs of cases that were there before they got there. Essentially saying it can be done. And shining the torch and asking, so these others who don't do it, what is it?
Yeah.
Is it that they have more cases?
Yeah.
Is it that they don't have enough staff? Is it what?
Oh, is that generally reluctant to
Yes.
actually push
So,
for this?
but if the court system itself, the judicial system itself, are the ones who have implemented this, and it also tells you the courts that have the highest claims for corruption, the courts that have the good and the bad, and they're doing it themselves and announcing it themselves, it's something that's very, very unique and something that I'd never heard of before. So this particular leadership within the judicial system seem to be walking the talk rather. Yes.
There's a lot that's actually happening in the background.
Yes.
Even you remember the kind of tough that tiff that the Chief Justice had with several judges and magistrates.
Yes.
When he wrote to them requiring that they send their reports to him within a certain time, and then some had not, or others had just gone and cobbled up some notes and sent to him, and he said, look, absolutely not. This is not what I expect. I want you to tell me the cases that you have, the cases that you've dealt with, the cases that you've finished, those that are ongoing, and when they started, and when you expect them to conclude. That's what I expect. So some judges basically is showing that there is a bit of hands-on management of the judiciary, wanting to understand this is the caseload that we have before us. How are you managing it? There are those that would still argue and say, yes, the judiciary is doing the job that the judiciary does. Perfect? Maybe not.
You know, in all these matters, when you look at them, whether we're talking about parliament, whether we're talking about the presidency, whether we're talking about the judicial services, what often clouds our judgment or perhaps help in our looking at them is the history. Our history plays a really, really important role in this. Because some decisions or that we arrive at with regards to determining how we look and how we see them and how we judge these arms of government have to do not with what they're doing at that particular point in time, but what they're doing against a backdrop of what has happened before. You see, like now, the issue that keeps coming up, the 2/3 gender rule in Parliament, it's very interesting that the a certain gentleman, the MP, the member of Mr. Kioni, okay, MP, is it Maragwa?
Daragwa.
Daragwa, not Maragwa is in Muranga.
Daragwa. He's also the chair of the Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee.
Yes, and he, it is reported in the Star that he says that this third general can't be implemented. Said to implement it the way it's being suggested would to actually go against the Constitution, because you have the numbers you have because you allow people to elect, and that is what they have elected.
Yep.
So if you want more women, so to speak, then you have to alter the Constitution. Essentially, altering here means you have to allow for more appointments. But as things stand, you cannot have that.
I always argue that that's a short-sighted view, and that is actually not short-sighted. It's a selfish view by politicians.
It's a gender-insensitive perspective.
Yeah. Political parties are the ones that nominate. If you make a requirement for political parties to have at least half of their candidates countrywide for every elective seat to be
We'll
of
have that
a certain gender, we'll be able to achieve at least some bit of it.
Yes.
We are likely to get there. But we must have the issue, by the way, is not
Train
even in
seems to be
Parliament.
moving backward, though.
Yeah, the issue is not the issue is with us, all of us as a country. Are we ready to have this 2/3 gender rule as a country? No. We can keep sending.
You know, the
Parliament back
2/3
home.
gender rule, I think, envisioned a situation where there may even be more women in the august house than men.
That a third needed
yes,
to be
yes,
men.
it need not. Yes, but you see, it's something that clearly is unimaginable. So that's why we keep talking about women.
Women.
Yes, but the 2/3 gender rule doesn't say women. No, it's just a 2/3 gender rule. But as far as we're concerned, gender
means
here
women.
means women.
That means women.
Yes, and actually it doesn't.
Gender, once you say gender, it means women in this country.
Yes, it does.
But if you look at gender, it's either gender, right?
Yes.
Male or female. So, and that's the thing. Understanding has not been put to task whereby you say gender. So that means, guess what? Of any gender. It doesn't say that you must have just women or of any gender. And so I would even take that conversation further to say that, is there enough understanding to realize that it is any gender, 2/3 of any gender in the house? And for people to say, people might rise up and say, actually, that's not fair, without realizing it wasn't just talking about women. Are you comfortable enough to have it on either side? And that's what needs to happen.
You know, Eric, once again, today is Eric's day.
Okay, let's just call it. What's
Yes.
today? September 1st is Eric Day.
It's Eric Day for actually making really, for introducing really pointed perspectives. You see, our thinking and our regard for women and the position that we as a community, Kenyan community, most of the male members of the Kenyan community, the way we view women, it isn't really much better off than viewing women as second-class citizens. Because there are things that people don't say, but they feel women should not be involved in. To date, there are communities where the idea of a woman even standing for an electoral position, hey, it's an anathema. You want at what? Now,
Something even scarier, it's not just people in certain communities in rural areas. Even people who are dressed up, suited up, tied up, and
But they
have
come
gone
from
to
those
and have more
communities.
degrees than a thermometer sitting in Nairobi actually have the same
Yes.
thing, feeling and emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the moment, so long as these are things that people hold dear to their hearts, and it's a perspective that creates that great division between men and women, and then with it is closely tied to it is what they perceive to be the abilities based on their view of women. Oh, goodness. This 2/3 gender rule, Mr. Kioni may actually represent that particular group of people, but it's never going to happen so long as those views are held. Yes.
It will not.
It will not.
It just will not.
It will not.
Bringing the conversation back into this day and the historic moment when the Supreme Court nullified the general election, the presidential results of the general election that had happened on August 8th, 2017. And we were asking, the issue basically was pointing to the management of the election, especially the transmission of results by the IEBC. As things stand today, 3 years down the road, if an election, let's not even call an election today, let's just look at 2022, an election is coming in 2022. Do you trust that the IEBC systems have been cleaned up in such a way that you would sit back and you'll be happy with the transmission of the results from across the country to the Bomas of Kenya.
Have we been informed of
But
any
is it-
cleaning
is-
exercise taking place?
Is it something that you should be asking? That's the thing. Is it something that you should be asking people that, oh, will you be happy? Will you be satisfied? It's not.
It's not.
It's not something that it should be. It's something that a body that has been set up, and this is their mandate. This is what they're supposed to do. It is not a matter of whether you like it today or whether you like it tomorrow. Whatever they have said, unfortunately, because it has been because its image has been tainted in the past, that's why you have what you have. But in other,
This one isn't tainted. It's completely dark.
it's completely damaged, right?
Yes.
But all things being and remaining constant, people's opinion should not matter when it comes to the IEBC.
But you know why it
and
matters?
the results
the trust
that would
levels
have
should be very high.
Absolutely.
So
it should be that
assuming
when
that
they
the
say
trust levels
something,
by that time were less than 50%, now they should be closer to 100%.
Eric, what has the IEBC done to show up those concerns? I mean, what have they done to improve their ratings?
They may have done some things internally, but they haven't told us.
You know, internally doesn't count.
And in terms of now building public confidence,
this
then
one
you've got
internally
to,
doesn't count at all.
It has got to be to the
Everything has to
public.
be overt.
Yes.
Yes, because for instance, if they had constantly been informing us, say, for instance, as a layman speaking,
Yep.
timetable for 2022 elections, these are the processes that we are going to set in place to ensure that blah, blah, blah takes place.
Yep.
And you outline it. And you keep saying, on this day, a week from now, we're going to do this, and it's done.
Milestone this.
Yeah, milestone this, milestone this number of days to the election. We now want to do blah, blah, blah. That, I believe, would constitute the cleaning up that you're referring to. So, in the mind's eye of the citizenry, IEBC is telling us what they're going to do, and we're seeing them doing it. Yes, we're seeing them telling us one thing. Politicians tell us things all the time. We are told things all the time. So it's not the telling. We have to see it being done.
Yep.
When it's done, you have time to already start implanting in the minds of people that you
This is
are,
what's going to happen.
yes, you are a government institution that does things. So come the elections, already there is some level of confidence that, these guys have shown us that they have actually been doing things. Now, the issue of change that we're talking about has been brought in. So even when we talk about elections, we'll say, actually, no, given what we've seen them do, I think these elections should be fair. But silence. And then a year to the election, you're going to be talking to us. We'll tell you, get lost.
But also look at the support that they require, because they have stakeholders that require they're required to support them. 4 commissioners left the commission. Now the commission has only 3 commissioners. All right. The commission fired its CEO. All these things that are happening, they require the other support from other agencies, other organs of government, for example, Parliament. In Parliament, allocating a budget and saying, so how much money do you guys need to do all this work that you require? So here we are appropriating this amount of money to go to the IEBC for the work that they ought to do. The other political leadership of the country. If the conversation around BBI starts with, we must first of all overhaul the BBI, the IEBC, and you're sitting there at the helm of the IEBC and saying, all right, so this is what we're doing. We are pushing paper on a daily basis. We are expecting that changes are going to happen in this organization. We may be expecting them to do stuff, but the other external forces that are pushing them against doing that are frustrating their will to do all these things that we expect them to do, could just be too much.
Sure, but I think also the trust levels when it comes to politics in this country are running already at a deficit. It's going to take a lot more than just saying things to be able to raise that profile.
And that's what I'm trying to say. The deficit is created. This trust deficit is created not by the IEBC, but is a construct of the political class. When you have this whole conversation all the time that, we need to restructure the IEBC, we need to do this to the IEBC, these are the politicians who are the ones who sit in Parliament, they're the ones who appropriate money and budget to the IEBC. So they already have this mindset that you guys, anyway, you are going. So why are you giving him money?
So before Sami Kivuitu passed, may God rest his soul in peace, and he said some of the things that he said in terms of this expose of what was being done. Do you mean to say that if those who are said to be in this whole arm-twisting exercise did not play the role that they played, the IEBC would have been able to deliver election results in that year that the majority of those who voted in a certain way would have been comfortable and satisfied with?
Let me tell you something. Samuel Kivuitu's Electoral Commission of Kenya conducted the 2002 election. Everybody was happy. Why? It went the way of the majority, overwhelming majority. Samuel Kivuitu conducted the 2005 referendum. There was no issue. Samuel Kivuitu conducted the 2007 election.
Where?
That went crazy.
Kivuitu and the devil, one and the same. So the same Samuel Kivuitu who had told us things before is the same Samuel Kivuitu who's telling us things now. This is how we're running the election. So yes, there were very many structural issues with the IEBC. And that's why Justice Johan Kriegler, when he came and audited the 2007 general election, came out and said, you know what? It's even impossible to tell you who won that election. Why? Because the IEBC, the electoral management body, had been so compromised at so many levels that it is impossible to even tell what happened in 2007 in this country. We don't know. That is the report prepared by a commission given the
An
mandate
independent commission
to audit
So, again,
that
my
election.
question is, without fuddling with the IEBC, is it possible that Kenyans would be able to trust the results that they
Yes.
would be able
Yes.
to give?
Yes.
That's the thing. So
Yes.
what we're looking at now is we're not saying that the IEBC is a compromised institution as it stands. But when you have the injection of political interference here and there, that's now when you have a muddled or a fuddled
Yeah,
body.
because the political class will frame a certain conversation. And if that conversation is we don't trust, then
Do
they
you
have sold the story of
do
there's
you
no
imagine
trust.
that this same political class...
Pause, City,
Please.
because Jimmy Kimani has been wants to contribute to this.
Please,
Jimmy, good
please.
morning.
Good morning to how are you?
Salama kabisa. How is Malindi today?
Malindi is very okay. We are very happy, and what a beautiful motion we have today.
Asante sana.
Yeah, what I can go. Let me go direct to the point. I have no confidence in IEBC.
Okay.
Reasons. When we said when our fathers were fighting for independence, and when we got independent, we said we are going to maliza ujinga, to malize ujinga Kenya, sure. But it is so sad when we see that we are inculcating ujinga. Why? Look, Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission. You come here, you take someone who is of another nationality, yes, and you put him in a position where he's going to be this lady who was in IEBC. Please, you can remind me her name. I've forgotten. The one who went
Dr. Roslyn
who ran away
Akombe.
to Dubai. Akombe.
Yep.
Look, a person with that kind of citizenship is not supposed to have any government office in Kenya. That's what the Constitution says. They are so ignorant that somebody like this, instead of looking at the background and finding out what kind of a people we are having here, they let such a person hold issues here. You talk about someone coming up and saying that Sava inaibiwa. Sava inaibiwa. Umejua wapi? Where did you know about Sava inaibiwa? No, somebody from IBC told me. Who is it? I cannot say. Then, after the election, the same side that says Sava inaibiwa, they say fungua Sava, si tumeshinda.
Yeah.
Really.
We get your point. Let me, as we conclude the show, let's hear from Karaoke. Karaoke in Nakuru, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
We're well,
Fine,
thank you. Thank you for
Karaoke.
joining us. I think we only have about a minute, so
Long
let's hear you
time.
in a minute.
I wanted to contribute towards the IBC.
Yes, go ahead, Karaoke.
Today, I even don't know whether it is complete or it is not. Because one, even when it was complete, nobody agreed on it. You have said about 2002, 2005, and we all agreed. But there comes a time when even if they give, as you have said, even if they could have opened the server, I believe the mentality that is with the Kenyan, they could not have agreed, even if it showed maybe the opposition has won.
Yeah.
As some other people could have said no. So even today, I don't know whether we have the IBC or not, because we have 3 commissioners. The others are left.
Yep.
And in terms of the unity, I even don't know whether they are thinking of the boundaries. Now that we are heading to 2022, I even don't understand. I even don't know where they are heading to. So to me, I even don't know whether we have an IBC or not. I don't know.
Thank you, Kariuki. Basically, Kariuki is saying zero confidence in the IBC. Not hearing anything from the IBC. IBC does not even have, well, it has quorum. It has 3. And they've always argued that is enough to make quorum. But out of 7 commissioners, you have 3 now. So now, it's a big conversation to have anyway, and we can continue this conversation some other day. CT, coming to the end of the show, please remind us today's proverb.
Simple, straightforward, easy to digest. Without fools, there would be no wisdom.
That's it.
You see, the comparative element is what makes this particular saying interesting. Because how then do you determine someone is wise if there isn't something to compare it to? Again, how do you compare someone is foolish? How do you state that someone is foolish unless you compare it to something else? One is just simply the opposite of the other. Yes.
Without fools, there'd be no wisdom.
No.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this Tuesday morning. We wish you a great day and see you again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Nduh Okoh.
Yes.
Do like that.
So, from now until 3 o'clock, uninterrupted music, and that's after 10 o'clock. And then Monique will come and see you home till 7 p.m. on the Spice Drive, followed by the Adults in the Room until 10 p.m.
All right. Tomorrow, good morning. It's 10 o'clock.